Hello, everyone. This is Tetrafolium, and with me, as per usual, is my good buddy Ephemeral.
It's me without JWK Jr. this time.
That's right. He lost his streak, so he had to go.
Whoa, spoilers.
Whoopsies. Anyway, uh, we have two divisions this time for this season. So here we are to cover the second division. Spikes is what we're calling it.
Yep, it's the inaugural Turn 17 Spikes draft, but I think, as you said last time, we're not referring to it as Season 1 or 0 or anything like that. It's just going to be Season 5 to avoid confusion going forward.
Yeah, there's no point in
Yeah.
doing all that. In any case, with the first pick of the Spikes division, we have Roaring Moon. What do you think about Roaring Moon as a first pick overall?
Great first round pick. Not my choice for first overall, but it's reasonable enough, I guess. If you really want to pick Roaring Moon, it's not far enough outside of contention that I'm like, why would you take that first? Like if you want to take Roaring Moon, I think it's a reasonable pick.
Yeah,
Obviously, Valiant's on the board, and you should always take Valiant. But if you don't want to use Valiant, don't use Valiant. So
yeah. I mean, I think I tend to agree. I think Roaring Moon is probably a top 10 draft pick, not exactly a top 5. I don't know if you agree with necessarily all of that.
look at the draft board. How many Pokemon here would I pick before Roaring Moon? I'd say it's like around like number 7
Yeah,
is where
something
I'd
like
put
that.
Roaring Moon.
It's like
Yeah,
a Larry Bird type, you know?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, that's fine. And then to go with the Roaring Moon is Pecharunt. I think Pecharunt is pretty good to pair with a Dark type. Um, you
I
know,
mean, yeah, weak to fighting, weak to fairy. You cover both of those.
that's right. And then the Dark type can help you out with other ghosts and Dark types.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Albeit Roaring Moon is not the best defensive Pokemon, but it's got good enough stats that you can switch in on a knockoff or something. Um,
Especially if Petra parting shots into it.
oh, for sure. Yeah, I think the two of these together is a really strong draft. I think last draft league I wanted to do Hydreigon plus Pecharunt, but Pecharunt was taken in the first round, which is a little schizo. But uh, it worked. No, it did not work out. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Um, uh, any case, to go with the Roaring Moon, we have Ninetales. So we have like this kind of pocket sun idea. Granted, if you're gonna do it, I guess Ninetales would be the one to pick because it's a less expensive version of Torkoal. Although I don't know how necessary it was to take Ninetales, especially with Talonflame going right
Torkoal,
next.
Torkoal was already gone at this point, right? Oh no,
Poss.
because this is the third pick. Torkoal went in the third round later.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember the position. Yeah.
It does not matter, bro. Death taxes and somebody drafts a Sun team.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I don't know how much of a Sun team this is. Again,
yeah.
we have one chlorophyll and one photosynthesis.
Well,
So
two chlorophyll actually, but depends on how much you
okay,
count
I
Sawsbuck.
forgot about Sawsbuck. To be honest, I think everyone's gonna forget about Sawsbuck. It's Sawsbuck.
Damn.
Um,
Hating.
yeah, and if you don't have chlorophyll, you don't get Serene Grace. So like, what are you doing? But um, yeah, I'm a little confused with picking Ninetales third if you're not going to take more photosynthesis mons, especially considering in the first 2 rounds, Gouging Fire and Walking Wake both went. So there's someone competing with you for like Sun Pokemon and the Sun Team idea. Um, why not take uh, more Sun Pokemon?
I don't know. I think.
Or why not delay the Ninetales pick to because no one else is realistically going to compete with the other person for it, right?
Right. And granted, another thing is like, why not take the best Sunsetter if you're gonna go for the Sun team? You know, like I see Talonflame, and to me that reads as a Defogger because I think that's the only Defogger on the team. If you take Torkoal, that gives you a spinner. So you can consolidate your Sunsetter and your spinner into one role, which I know sometimes you don't want to consolidate roles. You want to spread out so you don't put a lot of pressure on one Pokemon to perform one specific task. But in this case, I think like that. I mean, that's the reason why you take Torkoal, right? Is because you want like your Sunsetter to be a little bit more utility focused, right?
And bulkier.
Yeah, that as well. I mean, I don't think Ninetales is like bad. I think it fits maybe a little bit more of an offensive Sun team. Granted, I think just Torkoal's just better in general, but like you can take advantage of Ninetales' speed and it's well, it's not. It doesn't have a great special attack, but with Sun to boost its like Fire Blast, that's pretty decent damage. Um, I guess it could take advantage of things like Hypnosis. Uh, Memento, does it get that? I'm not sure. Yes, it does. Um, in any case, let's not harp too much on the Sun part of this team, which is like just these two basically.
Right.
I mean, there's a little bit down here as well, but the middle part of this team is really like interesting to me.
Did Cinderace really go round, what is that, 7?
Yes, it was not drafted earlier than that.
That's crazy.
Nobody
okay.
wants to miss a Hydro Ball. Pyro Ball.
Pyro Ball. Yeah.
I wanted to say Hydro Pump. My bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's see. I like the. I mean, it's interesting. You like, sort of like we talked about last video. You really want Pokemon with those lovely blue stats there to have defined things that they can do. Like you have Roaring Moon and Cinderace are both like good breaker sweepers on the physical side. On the special side, like your second highest special attack is Scovillain. Right? So that's not good.
I mean, yeah, no.
Yeah, especially defensive. You have Florges, which is really good. But that's it, really. And then defensively, you have Pecharunt, and that's really. Oh, you have Cobalion. Okay.
Cobalion's not bad.
Yeah, Cobalion's good. So like you have this, you definitely have fat in there with like Alomomola, Florges, maybe Talonflame can do something physically with like Wisp and Flame Body stuff. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of pivots in there to get your Roaring Moon in. So maybe this is a team that's going to run like a lot of Choice Banded Moon, and take it like since you have Talonflame and Cinderace for speed control, maybe you can just run like Banded Adamant Moon and just pivot into it with like your Pecharunt, your Talonflame, your Alomomola, your Florges, like literally everything on this team could just pivot into Moon and it could just start throwing out banded attacks. That might be a good game plan.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned Talonflame and Cinderace as being the speed control, which I mean, that they are, but it's also a little weird to have two Pokemon that are like the same type being your speed control, because like generally speaking, they're gonna threaten the same Pokemon. So like, it almost makes me feel like, you know, if Talonflame and Cinderace are on the same team fulfilling that revenge killer, it's like why not get a different Pokemon for one of them?
Well, you do have Roaring, but yeah, I guess I don't know why I have both Talonflame and Cinderace on the team.
Yeah, I know that they're not exactly the same. I think Talonflame runs like Will-O-Wisp a little bit more successfully than Cinderace, if for no other reason that it's faster.
My big issue is that only one of them can have boots. Both of them really, really want boots.
Well, I think a lot of Pokemon on this team want boots. This is a pretty rock weak team.
Um, I mean, who's taking the boots from them? Like besides like Mola.
uh, Molo might want them. Florges could want them. There's an argument for Scovillain. Depends on what
Yeah, but
your
if you're bringing
sets are going to be.
Scovillain, you should be bringing like Chlorophyll Specs or Life Orb or something like that, right?
I mean,
And the same for like
probably, but
nine.
granted, you
I
could get
guess.
like if you could get heavy duty boots to not take the rocks damage and then like get growth off during in sun, that could be good as well. I mean, I don't know if it's better
We have
than.
65 in our HP in every defensive stat.
I mean, you can live one hit for sure, or if you're threatening something, it
Yeah.
switches and you growth on the switch. That could be good. In any case, I know that, I mean, Talonflame's more worth putting the boots on, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But like,
Especially if it's going to be your defogger.
yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be the rub with this team is like it's going to be hazards weak, despite the fact that you have Cinderace and Talonflame that dissuade the hazards. You have so many rock weak Pokemon. It's like I'm definitely getting the rocks up. I don't care if you spin them back.
Hmm.
Yeah, and also I mean, I am usually a proponent of a balanced type of team, right? So that you could have some defensive guys and some offensive guys. But I don't know if I don't like Alomomola Florges as like a defensive core for like maybe a Sun team. Like to me, it doesn't. They lose a lot of momentum. I know that Alomomola gets flip turn and Florges gets baton
Yeah, I don't
pass.
know
You have
about
something.
Alamamola is losing momentum. Floor just definitely does, though.
Yeah, but I mean, to the point that not to I mean, Alomomola can keep some momentum, but because it has no like offensive pressure is kind of what I mean.
I mean, yeah, but you don't need it for that. You just like come in, take your hit, and then slow flip out
Yeah.
with Regenerator.
Well, in any
You
case,
just do that a million times a game.
I think a lot of turns of Sun are going to get lost on this team. Um,
Yeah, yeah. You have a
which
lot of momentum, but I think Roaring Moon's really the only Pokemon that really appreciates it.
yeah, and that's kind of the rub as well, and it is also brings attention to your point. Like, there's no great special attacker on this team. Like, Florges has a pretty high special attack. Scovillain has a pretty usable special attack, but like
Hmm.
nothing on the level of like
Right.
Roaring Moon or even Cinderace. Because yes, while Florges has a really high special attack, you're commonly not going to be investing in that so much. You're going to want Florges for its HP Spadef utility. I guess you can, but it's not the best at doing like the special attacking fairy type role. Well, in any case, I think we could look at some of the weaknesses. So this is pretty concentrated around certain types. I mean, the one that jumps out to me is kind of what I mentioned before, is this rock weakness. The only rock resist on the team is Cobalion.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Something like Iron Boulder would be putting up insane numbers on this team.
exactly. Yeah,
So I guess outside of Roaring Moon, would probably dunk on it. Cobalion probably walls it pretty hard as well, but
I mean, maybe, but like, there are a lot of rock type Pokemon or Pokemon that run rock coverage that have a fighting type
yeah,
moves.
true. But I
Roaring,
mean, at the
or
end of the
sorry,
day,
Iron
really,
Boulder being one.
like a rock's weakness is more than just being weak to rock type Pokemon. It's being weak to the move Stealth Rocks, which
Exactly.
is bad.
Yeah. There's also a bit of a ground weakness. Yes, there are 2 immunities. One of them is Gligar, though, which is, I mean, it is a ground immunity. It's gonna take 0 damage just like any other ground immunity, but I don't know how great Gligar is. And Talonflame, I mean, Talonflame's defensive stats leave a little bit to be desired. So while it can fulfill a decent defensive role, like as a a defensive pivot, um, I don't know if I want to switch Talonflame in on too many Earthquakes, because the one turn where they click a different move, that might be half of Talonflame's health. Especially if it's like a Pokemon with rock coverage. That could be scary. There's quite a lot of Water Weaks on this team. Roaring Moon and Alomomola being your resists is pretty good, but like all your fire types are pretty key to this team, and you're probably going to want to bring at least 2 of them to most matchups. So it kind of forces Alomomola to come against any team that has a competent water type. Which I mean that there's good and bad things about that. And then the last thing I want to note is, while this team doesn't have a huge flying weakness, you have Scoville and a Sawsbuck, which is like whatever. I mean, they're not going to come to most games. You have 0 resist to flying type.
Yeah, that is crazy because your steel type doesn't resist it.
Yeah, and I know that sometimes it can be hard to find a flying resist because you have to have a rock,
There's no electric type,
or steel type. Most teams are going to have a steel type, but some teams are going to have a steel type that has a secondary type that's weak to flying, like this team, for example. And then it can be hard to fit an electric or a rock type, I find.
Yeah, I mean, with Sun, at least you can turn off Hurricane. I'm trying to think of like what has really spammable flying type moves that you're worried about. Because flying is a tough type to get going offensively. Like, I feel like a lot of the Brave Bird users are more defensive.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's
that.
like, of the types to like not have a resist for, it's probably one of the better ones. But it's still a little question mark, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that flying in general is not a fantastic offensive stab, but
Something like Hawlucha.
I mean, something like Hawlucha for sure, but I'm thinking about other Pokemon that get acrobatics that can boost.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it may not be that you're scared of a particular flying type, like, like a Skarmory or a Hawlucha, but, granted, I mean, Roaring Moon is probably one of the best acrobatics users that's not a flying type, and
Right.
you have it, so you don't have to worry about it. But like, I'm sure that there's some other like mid-tier Pokemon that I'm not thinking about that gets a boosting move like Dragon Dance or Swords Dance and acrobatics that might pose a problem to this team.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, we could take a look at the speed stats. I think that you have a pretty good mix of speed here. I like having.
Good.
I like Talonflame's speed stat, if nothing else about the Pokemon. Faster than Weavile is and Darkrai is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for a Pokemon that gets U-turn and fire coverage. Roaring Moon and Cinderace speed tied here. I think this is a pretty good speed tier as well. Anything above base 110 is just pretty damn good, I'd say.
Yeah, and 115 after that, like being above that, is also great. Like, you're just, you got good fast up there.
Right, and then this middle tier here, with these next 4 Pokemon, that's all pretty solid as well. Granted, Sawsbuck is not usually going to be a big factor, but it is kind of nice that you have something to bridge this gap.
Right.
So in any case, I don't have any complaints about the speed profile.
Yeah. Yeah.
But overall, I mean, like many weather teams, I think that there's going to be some very key weaknesses that have to be played around. I think that this team is decent. but it's got a little bit of a mixed identity. I understand, like, you want to be, you don't want to necessarily rely on one mode to win the game, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna draft a weather setter, you should really lean into it because they're priced with the idea that they are weather setting. Um,
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say? Hello?
its main pull is drought, and just like if you're not of that, I don't know if it's worth drafting. Especially Ninetales. Torkoal has a bit more that it can do with like rocks and spin, stuff like that. But Ninetales, if you're gonna draft Ninetales, I think you need to be more into Sun. But
Yeah,
that's all I'll say.
I think I agree with that. So let's move on to the next team. All right, so we have Infinitely Silent, new player to our draft league. I didn't mention new players from the other division. Maybe I should have, but I'll probably forget on this division as well. Um, Palafin is the first pick. I think that's really solid.
Yep.
And then Lando T to go with it. Like, I mean, Lando T is arguably one of the best second rounders you can get, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I think this started out really good, and then Iron Moth on top of this, a good special attacker to go with your really good physical attacker.
Yep.
Like, so far, I think this is a really competent team. Um,
Yep.
then, then we have Rillaboom. I think Rillaboom is just, I mean, I think it's good. I think it can fit on a lot of teams.
Yeah. I don't know if this is the one for it. I mean, you threaten bulky waters for Palafin, but you do so in the same attacking split, with the same sort of like priority stuff, and you're also like turning off Lando's Earthquake. Obviously, can use Earth Power,
Hmm.
um, but I mean, like giving Palafin grassy terrain, and like giving it recovery when it like sets up is really strong. So um, I think there's a little bit of question mark, but I mean, at the end of the day, Fire, Water, Grass, Rillaboom's a good Pokemon. I'm sure it's totally going to work out. So.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be as concerned about those things that you mentioned because, like, yeah, I mean, yes, you can turn off your Lando's Earthquake, but like you ultimately decide what moves you're bringing, so you can obviously build around that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rillaboom and Palafin do share a little bit of a niche as this strong priority spammer, but I mean, why not have two? I think, I mean, I think that's not a terrible thing to double up on. Um, and if you're gonna pick two, like it would be these two or Raging Bolt. But kind of speaking of Raging Bolt, we have Raging Bolt's left cousin, Raikou. Do you think Raikou's gonna be a good Terra captain?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think so as well. Although I am a little bit curious why Terra Steel. Um, I think Electric is already a decent neutral defensive type, and if you were gonna go to a different defensive type, I don't know exactly if I would pick another one that's weak to ground. I think a more offensive Terra type like Ice would have been better, but that's just me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Fairy's solid. Water could have been good with Scald. Um, Ghost for Shadow Ball. If you want to pick like Fighting for Aurasphere. If you want to pick some of your other stuff. Ice is obviously good to cover ground types, but Water could do that as well, depending on what ground types have been drafted at the moment. So,
Mm,
but I don't know. I mean, it's a good Terra captain. I think it would be fine.
yeah, yeah, that checks
Like
out
just
for
going
me.
Terra Flying, dodging an Earthquake, and clicking Coal Mine once is probably enough.
Yeah, for sure. Klefki, I think Klefki's a pretty decent hazard setter. It's got Prankster Spikes and Prankster T-Wave, so it can threaten a lot of things. You don't ever have to run much investment because you can get a lot of value out of foul play. Um, I think it's a decent pick.
Hmm.
Now, it being your only steel and your only fairy type is maybe a little bit of a question mark, but I think there are definitely things you can do to survive the downsides of that. Um, in any case, Torterra, another potentially scary Terra captain.
Yeah, I think with Torterra, you're better off like threatening Shell Smash and never actually clicking it. Um, that's
Well,
right. Like your base 56 speed is low, so you're still gonna get outrun by like Scarfers or like Photosynthesis mons with plus speed.
hmm,
Um,
I don't even think plus. Do you even get faster than Ogerpon at +2?
Let me look.
Maybe.
I thought you did. Torterra, Jolly at +2. Oh no, that is quite fast. That is 464 for Jolly +2.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that is pretty fast then.
yeah.
Not faster than Deoxys speed, but I mean,
I mean, yeah,
that's the goat. So.
yeah. Yes, at +1 you are incredibly fast, or at +2 rather. But that being said, um, where is it? Is it 90? Um, it's like 95-ish. Yeah. Anything at 92 base speed or higher can outrun you with a choice scarf.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. So I guess you got to keep that in mind as the Torterra user. These Terra types are also a little interesting to me. Like Fairy and Water read as extremely defensive. Um, and I don't know if I would want to use Torterra specifically for its defensive utility. Like it has decent defensive stats, but it's kind of lacking in status or like a setup move that isn't Shell Smash. I mean, I guess it's got Iron Defense. Um, so I don't know about it. I probably would pick something a little more on the offensive side. I've seen like Terra Blast Electric on Torterra to hit things like flying types, and uh, that's kind of interesting. Um, I guess if you're gonna pick not exactly optimal Terra types, which I'm not even sure what they would be, but Fairy and Water are decent still. Still,
yeah, I mean, like if you want like I mean, I think, um, especially take burden off Klefki being your only fairy type. If you need something like that, Rock is the only other like offensive terror type I think about for something like Rock Blast or like a loaded dice shell smash set. But
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, that's actually a good idea as well. Um, but I mean, Torterra's definitely got the potential to be a win con. You just have to pick your moment when you shell smash.
right.
Speaking of that, Charizard as well. Um, I kind of view Charizard as like a budget, like setup sweeper. It's got things like Dragon Dance. I think it still gets Belly Drum as well.
Flame Charge, Belly Drum,
Yeah,
sub. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's it's got some sauce to it, but like the obvious thing is that it's times 4 weak to Stealth Rock. So, and most of these like setup sweeper sets don't want to necessarily run heavy duty boots. Like you want something like a citrus berry to get your health back, or like a pinch berry, i.e. like Salac or something to get even faster. Um, Not to say that it can't work, but I would love to see some good like spinning action on this team. And I don't know about you, but I still don't see a spinner.
Oh yeah, there's no hazard removal.
Yeah, we can even check that. Yeah, 0 hazard removal here. Um,
Uh, yeah,
so that makes me question Umbreon and Flareon. I think that they're both decent defensive Pokemon. Like Flareon's a little bit underrated because it's got a really high special defense. Granted, its HP is not great, and compared to Umbreon, like, it does. There's no comparison really. But if you needed that budget fire type and something specially defensive, then Flareon can handle that. Um,
but you have a specially defensive fire type. Look at Iron Moth.
well, fair enough. Well, granted, I could see Flareon investing more in its HP and Spadef than Iron Moth because you're definitely gonna want to pump speed and special attack. But I guess you could argue that you might want to pump attack with Flareon, take advantage of his base 130.
Yeah,
I think Flareon's a little got a. This is not new insight, but Flareon's got a little bit of a confused design philosophy. Like lots of attack, not a lot of speed, a lot of Spadef, not a lot of HP, and you're a fire type which primarily has good special attacking options and mediocre physical attacking options. Not that
right,
Flare Blitz is bad, but it's not great, especially when your primary way to boost yourself is Guts. And then being a
right.
fire type that's Guts, you can't hold the Flame Orb, you have to do the Toxic Orb. Eh. um,
Yeah,
and then Nose Pass is not doing anything realistically. I guess you could do
uh,
the sturdy Pain Split cheese, but whatever. Do you have anything to say before we look at the weaknesses on this team?
nope.
All right. I see a lot of red on ground and water.
Yeah, you do have 2 ground resists and 2 ground immunities, and like Lando T is such a great ground immunity. Um, that's probably okay, right?
Hmm.
Charizard being the other one's not great, but Rillaboom is a very solid ground resist as well, especially with grassy terrain. So I think those two. There's a lot of ground weeks, but those two hopefully help hash that up a lot. As for water, your resists are again Caliph and Rillaboom again, right? So hopefully Rillaboom can hold together some of these key types that you're having issues with, but
Yeah.
also the 3 rocks weeks with no spinner is a little questionable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you can handle having like 3 rock weeks and only 2 resists, but I think you kind of need a spinner.
Right.
Yeah. And then it also like puts you in an awkward situation where like if Charizard comes to any game, it's taking the boots usually unless you're playing against
Right.
somebody who has no hazards on their team, which is not very common, but um yeah. Speed tiers. I think this is decent. Raikou 115 is pretty good. If it was a little faster, that would be even better. But like 115 is serviceable for sure. Iron Moth at 110, that's pretty solid. Palafin's
Hmm.
100 it feels faster than it actually is because Jet Punch is such a strong move. Um, Rillaboom is kind of in a similar boat, so I think that your speed control is pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, you have Klefki with Prankster Thunderwave to help you out as well. Torterra, if it gets set up with Shell Smash, it's double its speed, so that's all great as well. Um, I think this team's got I think its weaknesses are a little too concentrated around this ground, rock, water. It makes me a little bit concerned that they're gonna struggle with like common glue Pokemon. Like the Pokemon that are on a team, not necessarily because they have great matchups all the time, but because they like plug some holes are going to get a lot of value against this team, I think.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
you still have a really strong like top 4, top 5,
Hmm.
and you can lean on them for a lot of matchups and still be fine.
Yeah, I hope that works out. I mean, those top five are really strong, so I think the Klefki I like as well. I think after the first 6 picks, the wheels fell off the bus a little bit. The only like the only Pokemon I'd consider drafting out of those ever would be Umbreon, really. Um, so
Yeah. I mean, Torterra's not bad.
Torterra's not bad, no, but
Yeah.
Charizard, Flareon, and Nosepass are pretty bad.
Wow. I think
And like you
altogether,
could have
yeah,
taken,
but
I think you needed this opportunity to take care of hazard removal, but
yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's really the thing that's holding this team back the most.
mhm.
All right. Next, we have I think it's Jaime Delphin. That's what I'm gonna go with. If I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize.
Okay, you got it.
Did you have a
I don't have
different?
any, I don't. No attempts are going to be made from me. So
All right. So first overall pick for this team. This is the third. Well, third overall pick. First pick for this team was Urshifu Rapid
mhm.
Strike. I think we kind of talked about this in the last one, but I don't see Urshifu Rapid Strike as a very strong first pick. I mean,
Likewise,
it it's good, and if you get it as a second pick, like I say for a lot of Pokemon, you're over the moon. But um,
right?
to build a team around it is a little awkward, I think.
Yeah,
Um, and then to go with the Urshifu is Sneasler, which is like, I mean, they're both really good fighting types, but I don't know why you have to double up on the fighting types right now.
yeah. I think it's possible that you're like that Sneasler and Urshifu share similar checks and get overloaded over the course of a game, trying to handle both of them. I imagine you took it as like a speed control option. Um, but my sort of question mark to that is like, I think in this division, Darkrai went like round 5. So that was an option that was still available for speed control. So I don't know. I mean, like Sneasler is a great Pokemon. Sneasler is more of a round 1 pick than Urshifu, in my opinion. So the
I would
fact that it
agree.
comes back to you as the number 3 pick is pretty great. Um, like it's a really good Pokemon. I don't know how good it is with Urshifu. There is possibility that they work really well together in overloading their checks, but if not, um, well, I guess we'll see, right? Um,
Right. Yeah. No, I kind of see the idea maybe is like, well, what are you most commonly afraid of as a fighting type? It would either be ghosts or fairies.
mhm.
Sneasler can handle fairies. Neither of them is like especially great at handling ghosts, but
Right.
like once you can if you can remove the ghost type with something else on the team, then like you're gonna spam CC all day, and CC is not the easiest move to switch into, especially when your ghosts and your fairies are not around.
Yeah.
I guess poison as well, but like I don't know, poison's not a very difficult type to hit, given that a lot of Pokemon get Earthquake.
Right.
Um, the next pick
So
is.
yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
if you, I was gonna say, if you look at these first two, it's like you, considering you're taking the same type, it's like you really need to start thinking about like psychic types, fairy types. Like Sneasel's obviously neutral to it, but doesn't want to switch in and take a fairy move with bulk like that for sure. Um, like you got to start thinking about the stuff like that. So then the third round is Kyurem, um, which is a great breaker um, on the special side, but it doesn't really plug any of the issues that you had with your first 2 picks. You're still weak to
Yeah.
fairy. You don't really have anything still for psychic. Um, I guess you can like threaten a ground type that might threaten Sneasler, but Urshifu did that as well.
Yeah. I think, and also like a poison type, for example. I mean, I guess Kyurem's got a pretty strong Earth power. Um,
Right.
to
Yeah, you
me,
still don't super hit ghosts or poisons well.
to me it looks like a Pokemon like Galarian Weezing, like really loves to run into these guys. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, maybe I'm
Galarian
overestimating how
Weezing does
well.
not Galarian Weezing does not take Kyurem moves at all.
Oh, not really.
But no. It's like it's a 2-hit KO pretty consistently.
Fair enough. I mean, it's still a strange Steam opportunity.
You big 30%. I'll be honest.
I mean,
It's not good. It's not good. But yeah,
fair enough. You know what I
Chi
noticed about
Weezing
this team?
does goober wall the first two, that's for sure.
There's a lot of 130 going on here. Do you see this?
Yeah.
This is-
If you look at the BSTs, like you have like a bunch of high 500, 600s, and then just they immediately take a shit. It's
Yeah.
like-
I mean, the rest of this. So the rest of this team, Heatran, Ting Lu, I think form a pretty good defensive core. I mean, they share the
with
fighting
no
weakness.
recovery.
Yeah, they share their fighting weakness, and they don't have great recovery. I don't
And there's
know
no
if
ground
it's
resist there.
yeah, I don't know if it's the best to go with this. I think this is a team that's like, if you had Heatran, Ting Lu, but you replaced like, I don't know, Urshifu Rapid with like Landorus Incarnate or something, then that could be pretty solid. But like, something that can switch into ground types and fighting types for you, or if you had like a Torn T would be great. Um,
Oh yeah, 20.
but as it stands, like I think this is good. I don't know how good it is with this.
It's
Uh,
like it's good mon spam. You just picked Pokemon that are good, because they were on the board.
right. And then Iron Hands to round this out. Like, yes, Iron Hands is pretty good, but it's another ground weakness with no ground resists.
Yeah, it's
And then
also.
yeah,
I mean,
go
like
ahead.
it does a lot like Ting Lu, where it like. I mean, they have different roles in like the hazard stack and what they resist and whatnot. But like, if you look at like their stat spread, it's like those are more or less they're cut from the same cloth, right? Like
Right.
they're very physically bulky, strong physical attackers that
Kind
like
of slow.
survive, like and, yeah, very slow, survive like 1 or 2 hits and get like big attacks off or do their thing off, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Although, granted, I think because their types are so different, you don't feel that effect.
True. They're both weak to fairy.
I
Your
mean,
only fairy resist is Heatran, which is a great one, but if Heatran goes down and someone brings like a Scarf and Amorous and just clicks like Moonblast, 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 you're gonna take a lot of damage pretty quickly.
yeah. And then the rest of this team, I think like to me, this is a big red flag. Smeargle, Clefairy, Altaria, Trevenant, none of these Pokemon are good. Like,
No.
not even like, none of these Pokemon are great, or none of these Pokemon are like going toe to toe with OU. Like, these Pokemon suck. I
Yeah,
I
they're
hate to
not
say it as
great.
somebody who had Clefairy on one of my draft teams, but I did
Yeah, but
not
that was
draft.
like a meme. that, was,
Yeah.
that was drafted as a joke.
I mean, yes, but you
Um,
know.
yeah, like
I mean, I
Trevenant is a
guess
spin blocker. Smeargle has like I
Burger
like
Hazards.
Hazard. Yeah. You
Yeah,
gotta
but
think about like Spore and shit.
yeah, but I mean,
Um,
like on a team that has Ting Lu already, I'm not that desperate for a Smeargle as a hazard
right.
setter. Um, Clefairy like has no use. It can't do anything. Like you think about
Yeah.
Clefable and you're like, ooh, Clefable's got a lot of good utility, and like Clefairy shares a lot of the moves, but because it really, really doesn't have the stats, and it also is missing the best, like, well, the combination of Unaware plus Magic Guard as options, it's only got Magic Guard.
Right.
Um, it's not nearly as disruptive as its older brother.
Is
but
Altaria defog? Is that why it's on the team?
I think so. I don't know how much it being a defogger was considered, but it is the spinner on this team.
Okay.
So that's not great.
It's also the only ground immunity.
Yeah. So basically what I'm saying here is the vast majority of games are going to rely on these 6. Some of these may cycle in, but they're not great. In fact, if I had a draft like this, probably what I would do is find one matchup to bring all 4 of these and just accept that I'm going to lose so that I can actually use my good team, you know?
But how good is a good team?
But that's the question, right? And I think we're going to see some of the flaws here. So look at how many fairy and fighting weeks there are on this team. And like it's not just like your Smeargle and your Altaria. Like it's your core 6 that are weak to these. Ground as well. 3 ground weaknesses in your top 6.
Right.
Like basically no ground immunities. Yes, you have Altaria. Yes, you have Trevenant as a resist, but like again, those are not good Pokemon, so they're not doing much for you.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is somebody with Great Tusk is gonna put up like triple double numbers on this team. Like
Yeah,
it's
I mean that's Luka Doncic plus Nikola Jokic.
right. Like it's like, I mean, Great Tusk just like obliterates like it's just so good into everything.
Yeah, I mean I think also
So,
about like Iron Valiant. Like if you
yeah,
can't revenge kill with Sneasler, you're super screwed against Iron
right.
Valiant. Granted, you know, you can't beat every single top tier Pokemon like perfectly. But this team is
Garchomp is an issue for this team.
yeah.
Like if you look at like the top tier picks, like I mean Roaring Moon can be
That
scary
would be
for
an
this
issue.
team.
Deoxys Speed
Right.
would be an issue.
Yeah.
Like anything like Psychic fighting or Fairy fighting or Ground Fairy, like anything that's got that coverage is gonna smash this team. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And like it's to a point that's like it's not like, oh, you have a lot of fighting weeks, so you have to be able to counter their fighting types. It's like you have all your Pokemon are weak to like one Pokemon on an opponent's team. Like we've listed so many. Enamorus would be another one that would smash this team. I don't know. The more I'm looking at it, the worse it feels.
Yeah. I think it's like it's super exploitable, right?
Yeah.
If you match up against people who don't like prep, I guess you're just gonna blow them up with like an
With your
Uber's UU
UU
team or
team.
something,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But if people look at it and go, oh, like these 6 like all have like some like pretty obvious weaknesses, or like yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if you were doing a draft like this, I think you should make a little bit more synergy between the picks. Some of them work really well together. Some of them I don't know.
Right.
The speed tiers, I think it's okay. Sneasler's great, but there's a
Wow, look at
pretty
that
huge
speed
gap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like these 110s are gonna sneak in and cause a lot of problems for you. Like Ogerpon is getting in on anything other than Sneasler and having a field day.
Right. It's superpowering your Kyurem, it's power whipping your Urshifu.
Yeah.
Like there's an Altaria there.
If it's like Ogerpon Corner with the rock coverage,
yeah,
or you don't even need
Wellspring
that
with
because
water, or
Low
Mold
Kick is
Breaker
gonna
on Heart
smash.
Flame,
Yeah,
or actually, yeah, Ogre Pond, just like all 3 of them, just like just lay down the law.
yeah.
I guess Trevenant Big Trevenant is
Dude,
there,
Trevenant's gonna have to
but
come to
Trevenant takes a U-turn into like something good, and then
or a
it dies.
knockoff. Ugh.
Oh yeah,
It's I don't know. Yeah, every time I think of another like key threat, I'm souring on this team. Yeah, the Terra types are like the Terra captains are pretty bad. Smeargle's not like a horrendous Terra captain, but like it's definitely not a great one. But anyway, I don't have much more to say about this team.
yeah.
Yeah. And I should note, there are a lot of people who are probably playing in this league who this might be their first league, and it might sound like we're being a little harsh, and we probably are, but we're coming from a place of like trying to analyze this as how competitively successful do we think this is going to be, because we hope that anybody who's watching this can learn from our advice, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, like I'm sure if you go back and like look at our old draft leagues, like when we were learning for the first time, like I'm sure our teams just look abysmal, right? Like
well,
with no
except for my season
synergy and
0
just clicking
team,
random stuff.
that
Um,
was the goat.
okay. um,
Buff Clefable,
so
please.
yeah, like I mean, like you said, like everyone has to start somewhere, and it's not like we're being mean because like you might not know what you're doing. It's more hopefully to like have an idea of what's good, um, and like maybe ideas on how to improve.
Right. And you take our advice with a grain of salt. Like, we're talking about Urshifu and Sneasler from the perspective of, oh, they do the same thing, that's not good, but like maybe that's just horrible advice, and you should pick Pokemon that do the same thing so that you can goober stomp somebody who only has one check to that. Like,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, and at the end of the day, like like we're not incredible like Smogon tournament playing draft league players or whatever, right? Like our experience is just from playing a couple in-house leagues. So
right. But our leagues are more serious than anybody else's. That's for sure.
don't let them tell you otherwise.
All right.
Uh,
Okay. Let's not delay too long on this one. Forget this here. All right. This is a really decent rain team, I think. I mean, Arcaludon, Pelipper, Barrascuda, that works.
Yep.
I mean, granted,
Yep.
I think Barrascuda, instead of Barrascuda, Basculegion would have been really good. I think so.
Yep.
The way that we have our board set up, if you pick Basculegion, you can switch between male and female whenever you want, and it can Terra. It just doesn't get last respects because that would be ridiculous.
Right.
And I think that's, in my opinion, that's always better than Barrascuda, unless you were going to run a non-rain team. But if you're going to run a non-rain team and you have to pick Barrascuda as your speed control, like, I'm sorry for you.
You better hope that their fast Pokemon are weak to water.
Yeah, exactly.
Or can take like a neutral close combat or something, or a non-step close combat.
Yeah. I don't even know what Propeller Tail does. What does that do?
I don't know. Don't ask me. Hold on, let me go look it up.
Yeah. Primarina to go with your rain team, I mean, that's pretty solid, right? It's a good Spadef. I think you would maybe want to try looking for something that's not a water type, because you're already going to have a
Propeller
lot
Tail ignores redirecting effects.
Okay, so it's completely useless in singles.
Yes.
Okay, good. That explains why I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
In any case, yeah, Primarina I think it's pretty good on a rain team. It's also just a really good Pokemon in general. It is a lot of water weaknesses, but granted, it's a rain team. You're gonna have a lot of water weaknesses. So,
Right.
or water types, sorry. Skarmory to go with this. I don't know how I feel about Skarmory as the spiker on a rain team.
It's ground weak, or not ground weak. Sorry, electric weak on top of all your waters.
Right. I kind of think something like maybe like an Overquill could have been nice, because you can take advantage of Swift Swim, but you can also just be the suicide lead spiker.
Right.
and you're gonna get decent utility in either role. I did not think Annihilape was a great Pokemon for 16 points, to be honest. But then a different Rain team last league kind of changed my mind on it. So we've seen Annihilape work on a Rain team before. I think it probably could work on this one as well. And then
I'm not going to comment on Annihilate.
okay,
I shan't speak.
Palisand, Malamar, and Muck to round it out as your Terra captains. I mean, I think they're all okay. I don't hate any of them.
I think Malamar's a little cheesy.
It is a little cheesy, but you didn't even do the cheesiest thing you could have, which was Terra Stellar.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But in my opinion, I think Malamar's best Terra types, just in general, maybe it depends on the matchup, but are Dark, Fighting, and Poison.
Mhm.
Ground, I guess, could make sense, especially if you're trying to hit somebody who is ground weak. So I don't hate that. Muck is it's a pretty decent budget poison type. I think it's got good attack, good HP, good special defense, and it can it gets the job done, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room. So the first overall pick for a Rain team, Chi-Yu.
Yeah. Um. I mean, Chi-Yu is. There's one thing that I'll say. Chi-Yu makes really great ocean LARP for this team. It's a fish. You've got your, you've got you got you got some more fishes with Barraskewda, right? Like you got your bridge with Arcaludon, you got like your birds, you got Pelipper and Skarmory, you got your
Yes.
sandcastle.
You've got
I don't know what Annihilape is doing.
He's like
Annihilape
a beach bomb.
kind of break. He's the scariest. Like he's the homeless guy on the beach, right? Muck is like
pollution.
people littering. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I see the vision now. I mean, it all makes sense to me.
Right. And if you're gonna make a LARP team, at least this one is more competitive than the construction team from like 2 seasons ago.
That team was so funny.
That team was so funny. But yeah, Chi-Yu is not a great it's not a great first overall pick, and it's not a great, especially like a fourth pick overall. And it's not good in the rain.
No, it is really not. I mean, I was gonna say, are you missing something here? Okay, I don't hate drafting a fire type for a rain team. I think that there are some Pokemon that tried to take advantage of a rain team that can be dealt with strong fire type moves, particularly grass types, like defensive grass types like a Celebi or a Shaman. Although I don't know if either one, I don't think Celebi's in this game, and two, Shaman was not drafted. But if you're going to do that, I would advise picking either a defensive fire type or a fast fire type. And Chi-Yu kind of doesn't do either. I guess it appreciates the speed control that's offered by Pokemon like Barraskewda. Well, that's the only one, though. This team maybe could have used another Swift Swimmer.
I think Basculegion or Oroqua would have been nice.
I think both would be great.
Yeah.
And I don't know. If Chi-Yu was say Latios or Enamorus or Darkrai instead, I think we would have a pretty damn solid team. But as it stands, it's a rain team, and it has Chi-Yu on it. So it's only going to be as good as you think a rain team is, which is not terrible by any means, but
yeah.
All right, so defensively speaking, a lot of electric weakness, only one electric immunity. And that electric immunity is Palisand, which is not horrible, but not great.
Right. Well, you do have Arcaliudon at least, but
I mean, that's true. Arcaludon is a decent switch in. Um, and not a lot of electric types are packing fighting or ground coverage because not very many electric types are blessed in the way of coverage. But there are a few that can be problematic. Iron Hands comes to mind. Um, but other than that, I don't think there's anything that glaring. Yeah, more ground weaknesses than ground immunities, but one of the ground weaknesses is Muck, so like I'm willing to forgive this. Not to
yeah.
not to say that Muck is bad. It's just like Muck is not like the staple Pokemon that's coming to every matchup, you know?
Right.
And then lastly with the speed tiers, Barraskewda is pretty good speed control, but it's kind of this issue of this gap. Like nothing is gonna hope to outspeed Barraskewda, so everything's only going to bother to outspeed Chi-Yu.
Right. Yeah.
Which you
And
can
she's
exploit
not
that.
fast.
Yeah, you can exploit that with Barraskewda by going adamant. Maybe not like you barely have to run much investment to be faster than Chi-Yu. Um, but I think it would have been nice to have another Pokemon between 136 and 100.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
something like a
Especially
Thundurus or
since
whatever.
nothing below it gets Swift Swim, right? Your Swift Swim's already the top of your speed control.
Yeah, that's true as well.
It's not like you're cheating your speed control with like Overqwil or something.
Maybe something like a Ludicolo could have been good for this team. I don't
Run
know.
it back.
Run it
A
back.
Golduck, maybe?
A Golduck would be Golduck would be really good too. We've seen budget Swift swimmers like Golduck do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, I mean, it's actually not that bad a team. I do think that it is a little questionable to pick Chi-Yu as your first overall pick and then draft a team that like does not complement Chi-Yu and in fact is kind of works against Chi-Yu. But I'm curious to see how it goes. You have anything else to say?
Nope, I do not.
All right. Now we have Anzo, who did not join us last season, but has played with us before. And I think this might be his strongest team yet.
Yes, I would tend to agree.
I think
Second time with Iron Valiant, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, this top four is just amazing.
yes. And then it doesn't get worse if you keep looking, which is a big boon.
Yeah,
you look
exactly.
4 more and it's good. I don't have questions until the last 2 guys, but like,
yeah. No, I mean,
so
do we even have to say much? Like, good rolls, good overlap with things like Terapagos and Iron Treads both getting Rapid Spin.
right.
You have great speed. Kilowattrel is a pretty relevant fast Pokemon, but you also have Iron Valiant and Ogerpon and Iron Treads to go with it. You have 2 solid Terra Captains. Entei is going to be really good, I think. And Mesprit is, I mean, well, you know.
Oh yeah, I know the Lake Spirits. Also, Terapagos, it's showing the BST of the baby form, so it is better than that as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
for the sake of, for the sake of it, let's just change that real quick.
Oh God, what is this song? My ears.
Thank you, Pokemon
God.
Gold and Silver.
God.
All right, that's a little better.
Okay. Yeah.
There you go. That looks more like it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Alolan Muck is really good glue piece. I think it fits really well into a lot of teams. especially teams that need some special defense, which this team, it definitely appreciates it, especially when you have Iron Valiant.
Right.
Yeah, Claudsir and Ampharos are kind of whatever. I mean, Ampharos for I think it's 2 points is actually not like completely terrible. Like Static is a worthwhile ability. That alone might be worth 2 points. But it's got decent enough bulk to live a hit, and then it's got a good enough special attack to deal some reasonable chip with like a Volt Switch. It also has some funny moves like Cotton Guard that gives it +3 defense that it can
Right.
try to exploit in advantageous positions. So I think it's decent. Claudsir I don't think is very good.
Yeah, I think I like maybe you wanted a special breaker for Valiant. Let me see what else is on the board for 7 points. And if that's the case, like at 7 points, you're probably not getting a lot better, right? Oh, never mind. There's
Maybe
Vikavolt.
not.
So,
Vikavolt, yeah. I mean, but granted, you already drafted Kilowattrel. Like, Vikavolt
yeah,
is kind
I mean, I guess
of.
if you were planning to go for Ampharos, but I mean, Vikavolt gets like Volt Switch and shit. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, but not to say that Vikavolt's not good, but I feel like Kilowattrel and Vikavolt are doing a lot of the same types of things. It's just that Vikavolt is
Sure.
doing it slower. I do think that it is a little bit of a shame that Kilowattrel's not a Terra Captain. I think it's really good as a Terra Captain, but when you have Entei and Mesprit,
I
like,
understand why
that's
it's
fine.
not.
Yeah. But
I think
I
those are
mean,
really strong Terra captains as well. Again, it's the fire normal grass Entei. Jeff's not here, so I can call grass Entei a fraud. That's stupid. I mean, it doesn't matter because you're never clicking anything other than fire and normal, realistically, right? But like
yeah,
the Arcanine LARP is not going to work. The Arcanine LARP worked last season because of things like Curse and Wisp and Morning Sun and Intimidate, and Entei's not doing any of that stuff, right? I guess it's
right.
Wisping, but
Maybe. I mean, it's
but
probably gonna
yeah,
Sacred Fire mostly,
uh,
but
but yeah, I mean that's like to pick on a Terra type that's never getting clicked is a small flaw. I love the Mesprit Terra types. As someone who played a season with Mesprit, Terra Fairy, Terra Steel as my only Fairy and Steel type, I can say that Mesprit's the goat. Obviously, it's a lot tougher if you want Entei to Terra because Mesprit hogged my Terra like every game unless I was trying to win with Diancie. But in this case, you have Iron Treads as a Steel type. Um,
Iron Valiant is a
Valiant
fairy, which is
is a Fairy.
more
Yeah.
more for the offensive utility than the defensive utility, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that's okay. Not every team needs a defensive fairy type.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Let's look at the weaknesses. I mean, the only thing that concerns me is 4 ground weaks, but one of them is Ampharos, and you have 2 immunities.
Right.
I do think it's a little bit of a concern though, because
Yes.
I think Treads, Entei, and Muck are gonna want to come to a lot of games.
Right.
I don't know if necessarily all together, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a weakness that I don't think can be accounted for, though.
Yeah. I guess like now that we're sort of looking at the types, the team like defensively, I mean, like this is really just going to end up being like an offensive team that uses like Muck and Treads to get into position, right?
Right.
And like Mesprit for utility. So I think that's going to be how it has to play. Like it's a bulky offense is how this is going to have to function.
I mean, I think it's
So
even a little less bulky,
yeah,
more
less.
offense.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, maybe if there's a team that can weather the storm and get the chip going, that would be good. But you do have 2 good spinners for hazard control, right?
Oh yeah.
Galapagos is pretty good into slower teams, like just being able to like toxic or like threaten calm mind sweeps. Like Terapagos is such a great utility piece that it can be your win condition, it can be a support mon, it can break, like it can do all this crazy shit. So I
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things the team does like okay, um, but I think it's very offensively sound. And if a team can't hold up to that, they're not gonna force you to do the things that you're just okay at.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's very fitting that we get the Entei theme to go with this team. Just needed to point that out. I know ball. Um, I mean these B tiers are great.
Yep. No notes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, other than a little bit of a ground weakness, I just don't have anything else to say. I think this is great. I mean, maybe if you
I think
switch Clawitzer out for like a decent levitate or flying type,
right.
then that would be perfect in my mind,
Yeah,
or
but I don't know
as
what
good
you'll
as you're gonna
find
get.
down there at 7 points or whatever.
That's true.
I think this is the most solidly constructed team we've seen so far in this division, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Okay.
All right, next team is Jet Frost, another person who has played with us in the past, but not last season.
Mm-hmm.
This is, in my mind, the most interesting team out of any of out of both divisions. Not
Yeah.
not that not to say that it's good or bad interesting, but it's like, I mean, you look at it, it looks like a stall team that you would run on Gen 9 ladder, right?
What do you mean it looks like a stall team? There's Gliscor, Clef, Mandibuzz, Dozo, Blissey. Like that's a stall team. that's
I mean,
that's five
yes.
Pokemon. That's five Pokemon plus Deoxys Speed stall. People used to do that with Meowscarada instead of Deoxys Speed. Like that was basically like a stall.
Yeah, I
I
mean
don't
it's
even know how many mons are different on that. Like maybe one.
yeah, I mean it's literally like when Semistall was in fashion for a few weeks. Like
Yeah.
this is it. This is what the team was. Um,
Yeah.
Now, I think that there's some key differences between draft and ladder, which may pose some challenges for this team. One is,
Especially the fact that we have item clause.
yeah, one is the item clause. Not everything can run boots, so you're going to have a decent spinner. Now, this team has Mandibuzz and Avalugg as options, both of which I think are okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're not the, neither of them is the best at doing that, but they're both like good enough, right? So,
Right.
um,
They are both weak to rocks, so if you knock them, then it reduces the amount of times they can come in over a longer game, and you are going to be playing a longer game.
that's true. Yeah. But they also both have recovery though. So
True.
like there's a little bit of trade-off there. Um yeah, and then that's another thing with this team. Like Gliscor, Clefable, Mandibuzz, Pheasantipity, Blissey, Avalugg, all of them have access to Recover, Moonlight, Soft Boiled,
Mm-hmm.
Roost. Like this is gonna be really annoying. You're not gonna be able to make a lot of progress with this team in conventional ways, or against this team in conventional ways. But I mean, that was kind of Freudian slip because I think that is kind of true as well. This team is going to rely on Gliscor, I think, a lot to hazard stack, and the rest of the team to start spreading status.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of the MO of Stall, but I think it's also kind of interesting. It's bolstered by Deoxys Speed and Lucario as like pretty strong offensive Pokemon. Particularly Lucario with Terra. I think that might, like, if you get positions correctly and you get all the status off that you need, Lucario could sweep a team and get like
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 kills to end a game. Um, I guess another challenge of Stall, I kind of got off on a tangent and forgot what I was going to say there. You you know which Pokemon are on this team, which Pokemon create the defensive core, so you can
Mm-hmm.
pick the coverage moves that you need to hit these Pokemon.
Right, and like you can also pick like the speed stats and stuff that you are like worried about. Like you don't have to like in OU you have to prep for all these other threats and stuff, but when you know what you're going to be playing against is stall, it changes a lot of like what you have to bring.
Right, exactly. Like you don't have to run max speed on most Pokemon against this against this team. You're
Hmm.
gonna have to run a little bit of speed because Pokemon like Lucario, Pheasantipity, Gliscor are not slow,
Right. Yeah,
but
the second you decide to disrespect speed and then run into like a Sword Stance Facade Gliscor or something, like, oh man.
right, exactly. And then Deoxys speed. I mean, it's got the gap issue where like it's like, okay, nothing is going to outspeed Deoxys speed, so we don't bother. So we're going to prep just
Right.
to outspeed Pheasantipity, which is the next fastest. It's only
Yeah.
99, which is not great. But, like, again, this team's not so concerned with speed control
Yeah,
as
it's
much as it is with
stall.
defense control. Yeah, exactly. So, all right, with Stall, we got to look at the defensive utility. And I see weaknesses to fighting and steel, but you have a lot more fighting resist than you do fighting weaks. And two of the fighting weeks are Blissey and Avalugg. I mean, I don't know if they're going to come all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Steel, I mean, in my opinion, Steel is the weakest attacking type out of all the types.
There's not a lot of good Pokemon that can spam steel moves, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, one of them is Lucario, but you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And
There's
then,
like
like,
Goldango, there's Tinkaton,
there's
Metagross.
Metagross, Jirachi,
Yeah.
but, like, most of those Pokemon are getting absolutely walled to hell and back by Dondozo.
Right.
Jirachi's like the only one that can kind of handle, and I think Jirachi is an example of a Pokemon that might do a lot better against this team than it does on average because it has a lot of coverage, and because it has like a steel type, it's not worried about getting toxic. But
Right. Right.
like if you're gonna pick a Pokemon to be weak to, I think picking something like kind of niche like Jirachi is not bad. Like
Right.
you don't
Yeah.
hate that. Um, so I think like for a stall team, this is pretty competent. I mean, there's a little bit of a fire weakness, but not really. A lot of your neutrals are really, really defensive, so I mean, you don't really mind it that bad.
Hmm.
No flying
Yeah.
resist, but no flying weak though. So interesting. There are the speed stats. You have anything else to say?
Yeah. Um, I don't really know how stall goes in draft, so I'm interested to see. It feels like the thing that if you like know what you're doing, you won't have as much issues with it. Like if you know how to play into stall and you also drafted like Pokemon that can beat stall, but if you don't know how to play into stall or don't have Pokemon that can like break, and you run into a competent stall player, then like it's just miserable, right? Like what do you do?
Yeah,
Um,
I think
that
this
being
is gonna be.
said, this like similar to stall. Otherwise, you have to know how to play stall. Otherwise, you're gonna lose, right?
Yeah,
Not that it's like I imagine like stall draft is probably more difficult than ladder stall, because like things aren't as standard. But maybe I'm wrong on that.
yeah,
So I'm interested to see. I don't think we've had anyone sort of draft full stall like this in our leagues. So
right. Yeah, and this is part of the reason why I said I think this is the most interesting team.
yeah,
I think it'll be really good for differential. I mean, even if you lose, you're probably unless you absolutely mess up really early on into the game.
right.
All right, so the next team. By the way, this player's name Ukakalaka. That's such a fun name to say. Um, but not that that matters. I think I've seen this before. Have you seen
Uh,
this before?
have we?
I think we've seen something kind of similar. I mean, it might not have been a
Yeah,
Slowking. It might have been like a Alola Ninetales. But like the Snowback Excalibur with Ogerpon Hearthflame,
right.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean it's a very potent offense for sure.
Yeah. I think all three of these Pokemon work pretty well together. I mean, there's a little bit of like a rock ground weakness going on, but like I don't think you mind that much.
Well, yeah. Let's see how you address it.
Yeah. Low kicks, as not a Terra captain, feels a little weird.
Yep, I agree.
Um, and I don't know how much you need low kicks for like its priority support, but then again, considering that you drafted Ogerpon and you didn't pick anything else fast to go with it, like maybe it's looking more necessary the further you go down.
Right.
Zapdos, I think, is a really good defensive Pokemon, although I don't know how well it complements all the rock weakness that we've seen so far.
Right. Yeah.
But Tinkaton does, but it's also a ground weakness, and we only have one immunity right now. I guess we have a resist with low kicks, but come on, that's a fake resist.
Right.
Um, Rhyperior, though, kind of helps us out. Um, Rock Ground is not a great defensive type, but as a Terra Captain and with Solid Rock, you can ditch a lot of weaknesses.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Rhyperior is a good Terra captain.
Well, if as long as it doesn't miss its moves and get flinched.
Okay, yeah.
So Titan, it's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
you have Snow on this team, and Slush Rush plus Snow is not bad, but so Titan's not great even in Snow. I think it's lacking a little bit of firepower. I mean, 113 is not a bad attack stat, but it's not like, I mean, I don't know. I guess you can always belly drum, and then it looks pretty damn good.
Yeah. I don't know if I like it as a Terra captain over low kicks though.
I mean, no, but you can't afford to do low kicks and Rhyperior. So if you're
Oh yeah.
if your heart is set on Rhyperior as a Terra Captain, which I think is very reasonable, um, then I guess I would see Satitan. I like Satitan more than I like Tinkaton as a Terra Captain.
Yeah.
Not to say Tinkaton's terrible as a Terra Captain, but it's already got a great type. You don't really need to change.
Yep.
Milotic, I think, is a great glue piece. Bulky water, you're never going to complain about that. Unless you already
Right.
have a hell of a lot of electric or grass weakness. Um, and then Carbink is kind of whatever. I mean, it's a budget spiker.
Yeah. You take it to the one matchup where you can hazard stack, and then that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. Speaking of hazard stacking, I don't know if I see a spinner on this team either.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
Oh, but we talked about all those rock weeks.
Oh, and look at how many. Ooh,
Oh no.
that hurts. And it's core Pokemon too.
Right.
Baxcalibur, Hearthflame, Zapdos, low
Yeah, and
kicks.
Ogerpon can't even get out of it. Ogerpon's taking 25% every game, every time it comes in.
Yeah, it can't even get the boots. And like another thing is like we have another Pokemon who's not weak to rocks in Slowking who likes to have the boots because it's such a like a prevalent pivot. But you just can almost never give it the boots because you're gonna want it on Zapdos or Baxcalibur instead.
Right.
Um, there's a lot of Steel weak on this team as well, but I mean, well, one of them's Carbink, who cares? And also Steel is kind of not the best type. I think Zapdos handles almost every Steel type.
Yeah, at least you don't have to deal with like Caparaja hazards, right? That would be a nightmare.
Oh yeah.
The Steel Spike or whatever.
Oh, that's right, the G Max form.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Another one that looks gross to me is this 4 ground weeks.
Yeah.
It's okay. Tinkaton and Rhyperior are a little bit resistant. Slowking can usually take an Earthquake. And then Zapdos is a pretty good Earthquake switch-in, but I would love to see another good immunity on this team.
Right.
Like, even if you have to do something like Levitate Wheezing, I think that's good enough. And also, I don't think Wheezing would be too terribly bad either, because it helps with the fighting types, which is a little bit of a weakness. Not the worst. But yeah, I think Edgequake is gonna do a lot of work against this team.
I
And
mean,
Rocky
hazards
as
are going to
well.
do a lot of
Yeah,
work against this team.
oh yeah, hazards are gonna destroy this team. um,
Yeah.
Speed tiers, not the best. It's not terrible, but like you would love to have something faster than Ogerpon, I think. Then it would look pretty good.
Yes. You definitely want something faster than Ogerpon.
Yeah. In any case, yeah, I just hope you don't get hazard stacked on, but you're going to probably.
Right.
Um, right, next team, Sapphic Disaster, and oh my god, look at that top three.
I mean, it's Sun, baby.
I mean, the only problem I have with Gouging Fire, Walking Wake, Torkoal as the first three is what are you gonna do against another dragon type? And then they answered that immediately with Grimmsnarl and Metagross.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean,
This is
this is
Sun the
looking
way
good.
it was intended, right?
Yeah, Slitherwing is funny. I mean, I don't know if Slitherwing's great even in the sun, but it's got some decent things it can do. It's got okay defensive stats, particularly in its special defense, so it can do the bulky uh uh Will-O-Wisp U-turn thing. It could also just say forget it and go choice band and smash with sun boosted, choice band boosted, first impression, close combat, flare blitz,
I
U-turn.
mean, even just U-turn, yeah.
Yeah, that's just like, I mean, I like it. And I was
Yeah.
gonna say, well, it's a fire week when you have Metagross, but the first three Pokemon that you drafted, two of them are quad resistant to fire, I think, and then one of them is regular resistance. So whatever. Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
exploit your fire, your sun better than you, including the Roaring Moon team that has it.
Right.
Um, Serperior is kind of interesting for a Sun team. You would think if you're going to take a Grass type, you would take a Chlorophyll Pokemon. I think something like Venusaur would have looked really good here. Um, I think you've talked about Hisuian Lilligant for this team.
Yep.
And I think that Hisuian Lilligant is good as well, although it is doubling up on your fightings with Slitherwing. You're not the best into a Fairy type.
Right.
And the Hisuian Lilligant would make you a little bit worse.
Yeah, with Slitherwing, Venusaur looks really good.
Yeah, I think Venusaur would be fantastic. It would definitely help you out against your like fairy types, because I think that might be the way to beat this team is to get a really fast or a really defensive fairy type, and just make sure that you play well around the Metagross, because that's the only thing that's really gonna stop a fairy type. I guess Revavroom as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. So the last three here, all the Terra Captains. Murkrow is kind of not much to write home about. It's got Prankster, and something like a Prankster Feather Dance might be clutch, but I don't know how much else it's gonna do.
It's Prankster Sunny Day for when your Torkoal dies.
Oh, that's also a good angle.
I guess it's a Tailwind mode potentially, but
Yeah, although I don't know if you really need Tailwind when you have Sun to boost speed for most of your Pokemon
right.
that
Yeah.
care. But I mean, it could be good for like Slitherwing with the boosted attack, or Gouging Fire with its boosted attack. Like that could be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Revavroom, I think Revavroom's a pretty solid Terra Captain. I used to hate it, or hate on it, but then I used it, and my tune changed pretty quick. Dual Stabs is not the way I would go for Revavroom. I think you want ground or fire type coverage,
Mm-hmm.
and fire would be even better on a Sun team. Not that you absolutely need another fire type, but like it it can be nice to double on the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably would have personally. I think I would have done poison, fire, ground. I think flying is also good, and you could switch one of those out. But I digress. Golurk. What do you think about Golurk in draft?
Uh, it's all right. Like
I
it's
mean,
got some things it can do, right?
yeah, I mean it's a spin blocker, it's an electric immunity, it has a pretty good attack stat.
Hmm.
No guard focus punch is pretty cool. Or
Yeah,
sorry, dynamic punch, not focus punch. Um, I think it's okay.
yeah. Like I said, it's okay.
Yeah, as a
I
Terra
don't look at a
captain,
Golurk and go, ooh, a Golurk.
yeah,
But I'm not like, hell yeah, Golurk. I'm just like, yeah, it's Golurk.
yeah, as a Terra captain, I think this is probably good. I think fighting is a consideration, so you can have stab dynamic punch. I think Ghost is a consideration, so that you can have extra strong Poltergeist. Um,
Hmm.
Brock is also maybe a consideration if you need it to help hit other uh, threats to this team. Um, but I think Fairy and Water are good on Golurk.
Yeah. It's interesting. Fairy and Water are like defensive or like setup Terra types. What setup moves does Golurk get?
To my knowledge, I think it's just Curse, but you would have to Terra to get Curse to be a
Right.
setup move. It may get Iron Defense. I'm not sure about that. Um, doesn't get Power Up Punch anymore. So
Hmm.
sad that they got rid of Power Up Punch. Actually, it is really not. I don't miss that move one bit.
Yeah.
So with any sort of weather team, I'm expecting to see a lot of weaknesses. Fire is not the weakness I thought would pop up for a Sun team, but I guess it has.
Right.
It makes me wonder, like, do you need Revavroom and Metagross on the same team? I think they're kind of overlapping in too many ways. Um, I don't think either is bad, and I think both have their place on this team. I just don't know if they have it together, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I mean, you talked about it a bit earlier when we were looking at the team that you have your first three Pokemon are all that are coming to every game are all phenomenal fire resists. So
yeah, that's true as well. So, uh, you can cycle in your fire weaknesses as well. I mean, not necessarily because they're both fire weak, they're both ground weak. But I think that they
right.
commonly are gonna do the same type of thing for your team. I guess Metagross is a little better at being a wall breaker, and Revavroom is a little better at being a late game cleaner. Um, both of them have like a speed boosting. I mean, granted, shift gear is better than agility, but I don't know. We'll see. Um, little bit of an ice weakness, but it's concentrated mostly in your low Pokemon like Murkrow and Golurk. So I don't think that's actually that bad. Um,
Hmm.
a fairy weakness for sure. And I think that uh, it's decently well addressed with your steel types and your Torkoal. Um, Other than that, though, I think it's okay. I mean, I think the weaknesses that you have are exploitable, but you could play around them.
Yeah, I mean that's weather in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, exactly. Superior, I think, is a good speed tier for this team. I think one thing that is a consideration for Superior over something like Venusaur is you don't need Sun to get the speed that you want out of Superior.
Right.
And Superior is going to be running Leaf Storm, which is a really strong uh, grass type move, and it's going to get stronger because of Contrary. So, like, you are really, really good into water types with Superior, which is nice. It also provides some utility with Leech Seed and Glare, and
Hmm.
Glare is great for your speed as well. Um, I think that Walking Wake has a decent speed tier. It would love to be 2 points faster, but it's as it stands, it's at 109, and it's just gonna have to live with that. It's just fast
Right.
enough that it forces everything to run a plus speed nature, which like is super annoying for Pokemon that want to get extra attack. Um, but
Right.
it's good though. Um, a lot of things that could be considered a speed issue on this team have ways to boost their speed, if not by Sun, then by like a move like Shift Gear or Agility. So I don't think it's so bad. Um, it's not the best speed spread we've seen, but it's definitely not the worst either.
Yeah.
Um, so overall, I think this is a pretty solid team. There are some minor tweaks I would make, but I don't like. I think you can find success with the team as is.
Yeah.
All right, League 9, we have Blob Fishy with the Meowscarada first pick. I mean, I kind of already had my diatribe about Meowscarada as a first pick. You had your counter diatribe. I don't know if we need to go over it again.
No, I don't think so.
I think a Pokemon that works really well with Meowscarada on paper is Volcarona. Volcarona can switch into a lot of the things that Meowscarada is scared by, like a U-turn and threaten the Flame Body, or like a Moonblast, and you're resisting it, and you have a pretty good natural Spadef to handle that.
Hmm.
Um, Meowscarada is the speed control that Articuno, or sorry, not Articuno, sorry, Volcarona needs. Um,
Right.
Volcarona can get really fast with Quiver Dance, but it has to spend a turn to get that. And with a type like Bug Fire, you're a little bit shaky against certain coverage moves. So uh, you want something like Meowscarada to safely handle being the fast Pokemon for you.
Right.
Um, I'm going to skip around a little bit. Empoleon Sylveon, I think, is a really good special defense core. I think it might be good to draft something with high defense to go with it. And what I'm looking at right now, you have Uxie, which is not bad by any means, but something else could go with it. Tyranitar is there, but Tyranitar is weak to so many common and strong physical moves that I don't think its raw 110 defense does it justice.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, like two of the most spammable, powerful physical moves in the game, close combat and earthquake. Tyranitar does not want to take, right?
and U-turn as well. I mean,
U-turn
granted,
as well, yeah.
it's got bulk to survive U-turn, but it's going to take significant shit.
Hmm.
Also, Dark and Rock both being weak to fighting means Mach Punch is really dangerous. Bullet Punch is pretty good. Uh, yeah, I have feelings about Tyranitar.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is interesting to note is we have two Psychic types. One's Galarian Articuno, and the other one's Uxie. I don't think I like having both of them on the same team.
It's a bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, they don't do exactly the same thing. Articuno is definitely wants to be the bulky Calm Mind sweeper.
Right. Or
Uxie is
agility, weakness policy type stuff.
yeah, something like that. Whereas Uxie is gonna more be a defensive pivot. But
Right.
they're both psychic types and they're both ground immunities. I think for the sake of your defensive profile, you could have picked something different between one of these two.
Yeah.
Um, Regieleki is kind of a matchup fish type of Pokemon. If it
Hmm.
finds the matchup that has no ground type, uh, it's fantastic. If it finds a matchup with multiple electric immunities, then it feels really bad, right?
Right.
Which, I mean, I think there's a place to have a Pokemon like that on your team. Not every Pokemon on your team has to be good in every matchup, right?
Right.
Um, and it is speed control. Granted, it's almost Electrode tier speed control, where it's like, yes, it's extremely fast, but is it strong enough to justify that? I think Regieleki is leaning more towards yes than no, but it is obviously got the huge coverage weakness.
Yeah.
Um, and then you have a pocket sand team right at the end.
Yeah. I mean, Excadrill's obviously phenomenal in the sand. I think T-Tar's I mean, physically defensive, it's not great. But I think T-Tar is a good Pokemon that deserves respect on its name. Um, like it hasn't been the GOAT in a long time, but it's still really good. Um, and I don't think Sand really fits with the rest of the team. But
Yeah, not
like,
really.
yeah,
I think with the sand team, like Meowscarada, I think works. You want these Pokemon that are either going to hit really hard and not stay in for a lot of turns, or pivot and not stay in for a lot of turns. I
hmm
think Pokemon like Galarian Articuno and Volcarona are going to be more annoyed by the sand than helped.
right,
Um, Sylveon, I think, is fine. It's probably going to have leftovers a lot of the time, so you can combat your own sand. And Polion doesn't mind it, but it also overlaps with type with Excadrill, which on the surface is not inherently bad, but it's going to double up on your ground and your fighting weakness that you're already doubling up with Tyranitar. So it's a little bit iffy, I'd say. And Houndstone, I mean, I don't think Houndstone's great. I don't think it's justifiable to build a sand team around Houndstone, although I wouldn't say that this team is really built around Houndstone. So, it's got Will-O-Wisp, it's got Fluffy. It can be a decent
yeah.
defensive pivot.
I think Houndstone should always be like the fluffy Will-O-Wisper. If we start seeing it be a Sandrush like sweeper, it's a little worrisome
Yeah.
because it's not really like it doesn't really have the stats to excel at that. Like it's not super fast, um, even with Sand Rush, and it's not super powerful. It doesn't get super like its Ghost isn't super spammable as like Poltergeist, right?
I
I
don't
don't even
think
know,
it
like a Shadow Ball. I know it gets
actually
Hex.
I don't think it gets Poltergeist.
It doesn't get Poltergeist?
I
No
think
way.
its strongest ghost type move that isn't, or physical ghost type move that isn't Last Respects, because that's obviously banned, is Shadow Sneak.
Oh
So
no.
so you need like Terra Ghost
Right.
if you want it.
Do you get Shadow Ball or are you stuck with Hex?
I think you have Shadow Ball and Hex, but you're also base 50 special attack.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Houndstone's got a lot of problems, which is why I don't think it's a very good Pokemon. Granted, I think Sandrush has its purpose, not necessarily to be a really fast sweeper, but to not take damage from Sandstorm. That's pretty
hmm
good. And
But is that better than Fluffy?
I mean, there's maybe arguments for it, like if you can uninvested outspeed certain things and get the Will-O-Wisp on them,
hmm
that could be good. Um, if you're not gonna Terra Rock is really weird. I don't think it's generally a great Terra type, but on Houndstone it might work because then you can afford to be Fluffy and Terra Rock to not take sand damage and benefit from the extra special defense that the Sandstorm gives you. Um,
Right.
I think Steel might be a little better, but Rock has its place. Um, in any case, we've got. I never know how to feel about pocket weather teams. I think sometimes it can work, and I think sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So hard to say. Um, Weaknesses. ground and fighting, I mean, that was going to be obvious from the sand portion of this team. If you ignore the sand, it's actually not that bad. Yes, Empoleon is weak to both, but Empoleon plus Volcarona, that's a good pair, I think.
Hmm.
They can switch in for each other's weaknesses. I think when you have Empoleon, its best utility is as a switch into ice types. You can afford to draft some like good ice weak Pokemon. I think something like a Garchomp could have been interesting for this team. But as it stands, I guess you have Meowscarada and Articuno to help out.
Yeah. I don't really know what to say about that. This is an interesting team where it's like I think like it's gonna it can get over the finish line in a lot of games. It looks kind of difficult to like figure out what's the best every week. It's not like you have a lot of Pokemon that have a lot of things that they can do, which is really good. It just makes it more difficult to properly like play and prep. Like if you bring the 6 best sets on the 6 best mons every time, it's going to be like a really solid team, right? But there's just so much, and it's not like premier at necessarily anything, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I think. I mean, I would love to see another breaker. Like, basically,
mhm.
your breaker is Excadrill, and not to say that Excadrill can't get the job done, but it is a little bit narrow in scope.
Right.
Um, if you're up against something that's not particularly weak to ground or not particularly weak to steel, then like, eh. Um, I don't know. This is an interesting team.
Yeah.
The speed, I mean, I like Meowscarada. I think you should draft something else that's like faster than 100 with Meowscarada. Regiolecki's a little bit overkill, but like, you know, I mean, with no investment, it's even faster than Meowscarada. So like,
Right.
yeah, I mean, a Regiolecki's a really cool draft mod, I think, because you can just afford to never run speed and have like defense plus an attack stat.
Right.
Uh, And I think that's really good in draft. And a lot of people sleep on Regiolecki because they're like, oh, if I go up against a ground type, I can't beat it. It's like, well, you can only have but so many ground types on a team, and Meowscarada handles them. I think another good like water type or ice type would have been nice here, but eh, it is what it is. The rest of the speed is okay. It's really
Yeah.
funny that these two psychic types have the same
It
speed
is
stat.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Uh, nope. I'm excited to see if this team works or not.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little matchup dependent. I think, but I I think it's got options.
Yeah.
All right, we have Doctor. I'm going to say Leia Polygon.
Okay.
Um, could be Lee. I don't know. I'm going to say Leia. Um, I don't even know where to start with this team.
Um.
What is this team's identity?
Pokemon that I'd be happy to take fourth, or they're not fourth. Sorry, fifth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's how I feel about like all of these highlighted Pokemon, right?
Yeah. That's yeah.
Cresselia is probably the best Lake Spirit. No, I'm kidding.
Yep.
I'm kidding. I mean, it is really funny how much it has in common with the Lake Spirits. It does not have rocks, and it does not have U-turn, which I think are
Or knock. Right.
well. Do all the Lake Spirits get knock?
I believe so. Azov gets it, Meshbrit gets it, and I'm pretty sure Uzi
I'm
gets
pretty
it.
sure
Yeah, I'm pretty
Uzi
sure they all
does,
get it.
so, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so Cresselia does not provide the same utility, but I think it is arguably the best offensively of them, which sounds strange because
I
it
don't know.
does.
I think Azelf is better.
I mean, it sounds strange because Azov has the better stats, but Cresselia is really good at calm minding.
Right, but that's like it's that's not like when I think offensive, I don't think like this Pokemon's good after it gets a boost, and it's better at boosting than these other guys. Like if Azelf gets a calm mind, it's not as good as getting a crest, but it's scarier.
Right, but I mean, granted, because you have this phenomenal defensive profile,
Yeah.
I think, and like a pretty serviceable speed, you're going to be faster than things that are going to try to outbulk you.
Right.
Like, I think.
Well,
Like,
there is a reason that all the Lake Spirits can Terra and Cresselia cannot, right?
right, exactly.
Like,
So maybe I shouldn't say offensively, but more specifically, it's the best calm minder out of all of them.
yes.
Um, and it's also really good because it's got that Lunar Blessing, which is a healing move that gets rid of your status. It's kind of like jungle healing, if you know that for Zarude. I don't know if it's the best because a lot of times you want the extra health that Moonlight gives you, but like it can
Right.
be really good into a team that has no great breaker and is going to try to toxic / thunderwave you, i.e. Jet Frost team. Um, in any case, I think Cresselia is good. I don't think it's a good first round pick.
No.
I think it's a Pokemon that works well with first round picks that you take in maybe the fourth round.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, Swampert is kind of the same thing. I mean, it's pretty good bulky water. Granted, it's not as good as it used to be because 190/90 is not nearly the defensive profile that it used to be.
Without consistent recovery, yeah.
Exactly. Uh, it likes that there's not hidden power anymore, and it also likes that not every Pokemon can Terra and then just Terra Grass and smash it. Because Grass is not a super duper common coverage. Like Grass Knot is on a decent number of Pokemon. Um, Giga Drain is on a handful of Pokemon, and then after that, there's like you pretty much have to be a Grass type to have. I mean, I guess Energy Ball. Um, but once again, this is not a Pokemon that really like. For a second round pick, like your first two picks, you want to build your team around them. Like these two are not. These are glue guys. They're not like build your team around them. They're not the superstars.
Right.
Neither is Scizor.
Yeah.
And I think that
I mean,
you go down this list and you're saying the same thing about every Pokemon, right?
exactly. These are all like glue guys. Like Scissor's probably the best of them in being like
Maybe
and
Hydreigon
then
is like a self-sufficient sort of superstar type. I
yeah,
don't know. It's between those two, but neither of them is fantastic at that.
right.
Um, Ceruledge is probably the best win con that this team has.
Yeah.
But Ceruledge is not a super duper consistent win con. It's not gonna beat an entire team by itself.
No, it's very cheesy.
Yeah. It's not hard to play around, especially if you know its gimmicks. Like the
Right.
Endure, Weakness Policy, Weak Armor type thing. It's like Swords Dance with a Resist Berry. Um, like it's got a few gimmicks, but it can only run but so many of them, right?
Right.
ENAMT, again, another glue guy. You pick it when you need a defensive fairy type, but you don't have access to other ones like Sylveon or Florges, right?
Right. And you also want one that's like a bit more potent as like a win condition.
Yeah.
Like a double dance Enam in the right spot can do work, but
Yeah. Rotom-Mow, another glue guy. I mean, this is like the time that you would be taking glue guys, and Rotom-Mow is good as a glue, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna harp too much on this part of the team. I think it's solid, but like with no sauce.
yeah.
The rest of this, I think like really the plot is lost. 3 normal types out of your last 4, like why?
I mean, like Hitmontop and Meloetta are fine. Uh, like a spinner, they're both solid Terra captains, although Meloetta's not, which is not good. It's
Right.
like
I think
way
Meloetta's a
better as a Terra
lot
captain.
worse when it's not a Terra Captain.
Yeah. And then Zangoose is like funny. And like maybe you'll cheese somebody with it, but like slacking, like come on.
No,
Like
slacking is completely terrible. I mean, I like slacking maybe influences somebody to run protect on a Pokemon just for like being a
right,
hard counter to slacking, which is good for you because you're making your opponent waste a move slot on a move they otherwise could be using. Like
right.
you don't necessarily want to run protect on a lot of Pokemon, but like slacking is just so bad. And
Yeah,
particularly as a Terra captain at the opportunity cost of Meloetta or Rotom-Mow,
right,
like no, and even its types too, like Dragon and Poison are primarily defensive, right? But Slacking does not want to be a defensive Pokemon. Yes,
right,
it's got good defensive stats, particularly physically, but because you're only hitting every other turn, like your defenses are effectively halved because you're getting attacked twice as much.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah, like defensively, if like for example, say you're bringing like slacking to check something, and you switch in to take an attack, and then what you're checking protects, then it's just gonna hit you. It's like you can't check anything because anything you can check just runs protect, which is on like 90% of Pokemon or whatever. It's
right,
like
yeah,
you can't actually check anything ever because you just get abused.
right. You can kind of get away with it on ladder, like even then, not really because slacking is still really bad. But
Yeah.
uh, like I don't know. I I would love to see Terra Normal Giga Impact to like barely not kill something and then that thing sets up and wins the game. I mean,
Wow,
I
you'd
don't
love to see that.
I would not love to see that for Dr. Leia Polygon, but I would love to see that for anybody else who's thinking about drafting Slacking in the future. I mean, even if it gets the kill, like so some people will say like, oh, you can run Giga Impact on Slacking because like it only attacks every other turn anyway. You don't care about the recharge turn, but you like really do because ideally you get the kill with Slacking and then you can switch so that you don't give
Right.
the opponent a Pokemon that's in front of you time to get its utility off, time to get its setup
Right.
in, or whatever.
Like say you kill something with slacking, and then the Garchomp comes in and clicks Sword Stance, and it's like, oh no, and then it kills you with like Scale Shot the next turn, and now you lose to Garchomp,
Yeah,
right?
right. And I mean, Garchomp is only one of like probably a few
Right.
hundred examples of that could
Dart
happen.
Dart an attack booster Tusk comes in and clicks Rapid Spin, right? A
Right.
Darkrai comes in and clicks Nasty Plot. Fucking I don't know anything.
Yeah. Anything with Calm Mind, anything with Dragon Dance, anything with Iron Defense, like you're like I don't know. Another thing about this team, look at this attack, like the attack stats. This is like really good, right?
Yeah.
And then look at the Spatak, and this is pretty good.
Right.
But like, and then look at the speed though. It's like, I don't know. Bug weakness is funny. Hold on. Yes, I want to keep watching. I don't know why YouTube does that. Um, Bug weakness is really funny. It's,
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to say like, oh, like to judge because I don't know what the core Pokemon of this team are. Like this team is constructed so that you can kind of like shuffle in all 6 because all 6 are about as good as each other. But what that means is
Right.
that like all your Pokemon are kind of mid. I mean,
Right. Yeah,
I
we've
hate to say
seen
it, but like Ugh.
we've seen a team like this before, and that team had Ursaluna Blood Moon, and that team was not great.
Yeah, I
Like it
agree.
had one like guy that was like, this is my Saucemon, and it was still bad. And this
Yeah,
team doesn't have that. So
yeah. I would say in general. So I know that we allow you to pick up to 12 Pokemon, but I would say in general, it's better to find stronger Pokemon than it is to fill out your roster of 12.
yeah, this is like the opposite of that one team where it was like the first 6 picks were like really really strong Pokemon, and then like 4 really bad picks. It's like this didn't pick any really good Pokemon, and all it has is like mediocre picks, and it's like they're the same issue from different directions where you one guy really could stand to take some glue Pokemon, and the other person could really stand to take some heaters, right?
Right. Yeah. And then let's looking at the speed tiers, like this is like really the kicker for me. You're gonna have to bring a Scarf Pokemon every game,
Yeah,
and it's probably gonna be Hydreigon or Meloetta.
right. So it's
Um,
probably gonna be Hydreigon.
so it's probably gonna be Hydreigon. Um, like, yeah, I don't know. I think this team is gonna struggle a lot on Revenge Kill because none of these Pokemon are very fast. None of them are like fantastic defensively, other than like Cresselia, maybe Scizor, maybe an
Hmm.
Amorous T. It depends on what they're switching into. But you're always losing on speed, and then like additionally, because a lot of your Pokemon are pretty slow, a lot of like the really fast, strong Pokemon like your Darkrai's and Weaviles are just going to be able to run Adamant and get away with it.
Right.
Um, and that's a big problem in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see the moves on this. So 2 Defoggers, that's pretty good. Spikes, like with 12 Pokemon and you only have one Spiker, like that's and like such limited hazards in general, I don't know about that. Okay, momentum. A lot of knockoff, that's pretty good. A lot of
Right.
like a lot of Thunder Wave is pretty good, although one of them is slacking. That's weird. A lot of priority, some decent disruption. I mean, it's I I think every Pokemon on this team except for maybe Zangoose and definitely Slacking has a place. I just like there just needs to be something to build around though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. If you're trying to build a pyramid, you got to get past the foundation, right?
Right.
Um, let's move on. Okay, I see the first 2 picks, and I think I'm already in love with this team. Landorus and
Okay.
Weavile, as far as draft Pokemon go, I love them. I think they're both really good at what they do. Landorus is a really good wall breaker, and Weavile's really good speed control for not extremely expensive cost.
Hmm.
Um, so picking both together, I think that's great. And then building the defensive core around this, because that's what I would do. I would say these two are like really solid offensive Pokemon. I just need to have some good defensive pivots, and we can call it a day. Toxapex, I think, goes really well with these two.
Right.
Um, you're worried about fighting type moves for Weavile. You're worried about ice type moves for Landorus, and Toxapex switches into both. So, I'm like definitely no complaints there. Uh, I think Salamence, like all of this looks really good to me as well. The one question mark I have is Glamora.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
it's not to say that Glamora is bad, but like it shares some utility with Toxapex as a toxic Pokemon. It does have spikes, which I don't think anything else on the team gets, but you could probably pick a less expensive spiker and get away with that.
Right.
Like it's got good special attack, but you already have some pretty good special attackers on the team. I don't know if you absolutely need Glamora for that. Um, But that being said, like I don't see anything on this team that really jumps out to me as like, oh, like this is not well constructed. I think this is all pretty solid.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is definitely one of the best teams we've looked at tonight.
Yeah. I think Indeedee plus Sceptile is kind of sneaky.
Yeah, I guess I am worried about shutting off like my Weavile, but um,
Yeah, but then again, Weavile is one of those Pokemon where it can abuse its priority, but it also does not like to face opposing priority. So
yeah,
it kind of goes both ways. Unfortunately, your other Pokemon that are a little weak to priority, like Landorus and Salamence, are not going to be helped by the Psychic Terrain because they're off the ground.
right.
But I mean, I definitely don't hate Indeedee. I think it's better as a Terra Captain, but Jolteon is, I think, a little bit better. And Sceptile, I understand why you would want Terra Sceptile. Um, this Terra Flying is going to be really clutch. Uh, it Sceptile gets acrobatics, and unburdened acrobatics is like that's a tried and true method right there. So, any other thoughts? Anything that you think this team needs that it doesn't have?
Um,
Could use a better spinner than Glamora.
the defensive core isn't incredible, but
Yeah,
um,
I could see that.
like
I
you
mean,
just have to play it offensively, and I don't know if Hex is the fit for an offensive team like that, right? Because it doesn't have doesn't have like a flip turner or a generator or something like that. Or to flip turn to go with the true generator, it doesn't have chili, it doesn't have something like that to get you back into the Pokemon you want to be into.
yeah, that's definitely fair. Like, if Glamora was say like a bulky pivot with a recovery move, I don't know, like Corviknight maybe.
I don't know. I think Glamora is fine. I think Toxapex is the one I have the issue with.
Oh, you have an issue with Toxapex. You would go more offensive.
I think the rest of the team doesn't support the loss of momentum.
I could agree. I could maybe agree with that. I think Toxapex is not terrible because it's threatening things like Toxic and Knockoff, which not every Pokemon wants to take that. But I could agree that it's kind of a letting a setup Pokemon do its thing.
Right.
You do have Intimidate on 2 Pokemon that can help you out against the physical setup Pokemon. And although you don't really have a great special wall other than Toxapex that you could go to. Like, let's say like a Calm Mind Raikou could be a problem for this team. I mean, maybe not really because you have Lando and Jolteon as the immunities, but you kind of get what I'm saying. I hope.
Yeah, I mean, Toxapex, like, I don't know how vulnerable it is to being like set up on because you
You do have
toxic
Haze
things
as well.
and you have haze. Yeah, I think that's not what I'm worried about with Toxapex. I just think like you want something with momentum. Like if you're not going to be like a defensive structure, like Toxapex needs to get back into the guys you want to be into to click buttons, right?
Yeah, maybe like Slowking, like regular Johto Slowking could
Right.
have went
Exactly.
well there. I could see that as an argument. I'm still I still don't love Glamora, but I mean I guess I could see if you were going more offensive. I see the argument
Right.
for Glamora. But I think changing 1 or 2 of these guys, these poison types, would be like a way to make a pretty good team into a really good team. Let's look at the weaknesses. So, I mean, I see ground. Like, yes, you have 2 quad weak to grounds on this team. And like your best defensive Pokemon is weak to ground as well. But you do have 2 immunities, and both of them are like really threatening if they're coming in on an earthquake. Like they can very easily threaten out whatever it is. Although you have to be careful because both of them are ×4 weak to ice. So if you're up against something with ground ice coverage, like a Great Tusk with Ice Spinner or Mamoswine. That could be tough.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so I'd watch out for that. Another thing that jumps out to me, and I didn't even realize this, 3 rock weeks, 0 resists.
Mm,
So that could
yeah.
be a little bit of a problem. And then you're
Especially with
only,
Glamora as your spinner, right?
yeah. I mean, yeah, we don't have any defoggers or anything.
Right.
And I mean, I know that people talk about ghost types as spin blockers, and that's like, yeah, that's great. I think if Glamour is your only spinner, it's
The steel
so
type
much
is
easier to be
so
a steel
easier.
type spin
Yeah.
blocker, right? Like there's
Right.
so many Pokemon that Terra into steel type, not for the purpose of spin blocking, but for like anything else really, like the defensive utility. Um,
Right.
there's so many like every team's gonna have a steel type except for this team apparently, which would maybe help out with the rock weakness. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I
that
mean, yeah, you'd much rather be a bulky steel type than a bulky ghost type, right?
right, yeah, I would agree with that. You have a lot of poison resist, which is interesting.
You do have two poison types, right? So
Yeah, but you also have a ground type, a rock type, a
mhm.
ghost type. Like, it's interesting. I wonder if you could have afforded to take a fairy type, because this team also does not have a fairy type, I don't
Oh,
think.
no steel, no fairy is interesting.
Yeah, no steel, no fairy. That means that Indeedee should be a lake spirit. It's interesting. The speed tiers I think are really nice. I mean, look at that. That every team would love to have this, right?
Right.
Although there's a pretty big gap between Sceptile and Landorus. Um, it slots in a lot of uh, nasty
The
Pokemon.
110s.
The 110s, your 120, 25s can run
Mhm.
they could run Adamant or Modest. Although I don't know. I guess you probably want to speed tie Weavile as much as you can, right? I don't know. Um, but yeah, no, I think this is pretty good for the speed. Um, but yeah, I think it's a little bit shaky defensively, especially because you have the rock weakness and your only spinner is Glamora.
Right.
And like realizing that made me turn a little bit south on this team, but I still think it's pretty good.
Yeah. Same. Same here.
Yeah. All right, Mon, coming back from last league. First pick Corviknight. What do you think about that?
I think the Terra types got messed up somehow.
Ah,
Said no, that's not right.
that's interesting. I will have to fix that later, but just for the
Oh, wait, hold
sake
on.
of it.
Is it wrong just right there?
Oh, is it just
It's
wrong here?
electric, grass, flying.
Electric. And
And
then,
then
is it
the
Toucannon?
two cannon, normal, dragon, ground.
Okay. We'll have a little
We're
bit
going to
of a
talk about
discussion about
that.
that.
We're going to come back to that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But Corviknight first pick. Dog, I'm going to be honest. I don't even like Corviknight as a third pick. If I
Dude,
can keep this down here.
there's no chance you pick Corviknight first. Sorry. I think Corviknight is one of the best glue type Pokemon in the draft because like Steel Flying is a great defensive type. Or at least it's great when paired with a lot of the top Pokemon that are weak to ground, weak to things that Steel will handle. But like first pick, I don't know. I think it has a role that's fairly replaceable. I don't know if you have to
Right.
lock it in right away. If you get
No.
sniped on Corviknight, you're not like, oh man, I like my whole draft is busted now. You know.
Right.
The next thing we see is double dragons. If you're gonna pick 2 dragons, I think these are 2 pretty good dragons to pick.
Yeah, I mean, like Raging Bolt is a really great second pick.
Latias, I think, is
Latias
really
is,
good, second or third.
yeah, they're both special win condition dragons, but they do like one of them can break, one of them can be a setup sweeper,
Yeah, and you can
one of them
switch
speed
which one
control,
is
one of them's
which.
priority. Like you have, yeah, like the fact that they're functional outside of that one shared like job that they do is good, right?
Yeah,
Like you would love that if one of them was a physical like a dragon, the other one was special, and you could choose based on that. But I mean, they're both really good Pokemon.
yeah, exactly.
So
And then Jirachi. Jirachi is my favorite Pokemon, as you could probably tell by my profile picture. I don't know about it competitively. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's a little mid. In draft, I think it's a pretty solid Pokemon. It gives you a Steel type with U-turn, which like you don't get that very often unless you draft Corviknight, which then makes me question why we need Jirachi. Um, Not to say that Jirachi and Corviknight can't like coexist on the same team, but they have a lot of overlapping
all
utility.
said, I don't think you should have Jirachi and Corviknight on the same team.
I mean, that's fair, but I think there's also something to be said about like if you can remove the ground, fire, electric types, like then it's going to be really hard to break both of them. Not That's a
Yeah,
little bit easier said than done. I think what you would want to have for that is a really strong ground type, and I don't see that on this team.
hmm
Um, Something to think about maybe if you're looking at trades. Then we get this part of the team, and I like we talk about the wheels falling off the bus, and yeah, I don't really get this.
yeah.
What?
I mean, like Corviknight Venusaur to me is like, oh, like or not Corviknight, sorry, Raging Bolt Venusaur is like, oh, this could be a Sun team, but there's no Sun setter,
Yeah,
so
that yeah. I think individually some of these are good. This isn't weird. This is a really weird fire, water, grass. Manaphy,
yeah,
Tauros, Blaze, Venusaur. I mean, I'm kind of with it because they're all three of these Pokemon are decent offensive, decent defensive. Um, but I don't know how well it complements what's going on up here.
hmm
Yeah, I don't know. Mimikyu is your fairy type, and especially not as a Terra Captain. I don't know about that. Um, I'm not a big fan of Mimikyu to begin with, but I think especially not as a Terra Captain. It not being a Terra Captain gives me even more pause.
um, I I'm more of a Mimikyu believer than you are, not by a lot though, um, but yeah,
Yeah, it can do some tricky things. Like it
yeah,
has a pretty decent speed stat, but it's also a really good trick rumor because of
yeah,
Disguise. Um, but not that this team really wants to do a trick room idea. We have Galvantula. Galvantula to me reads like, oh, you need webs for your team, but I don't know if this team needs webs. Like, yeah, your fastest being Latias is not the best, but I think that could have been fixed by drafting another fast Pokemon, not going the like nuclear option of Sticky Web.
right.
And then as a Terra Captain, I feel like Galvantula is not great as a Terra Captain because commonly it's going to come in, get up Sticky Web, and throw off like a Thunder, and then it dies. Like, so you don't get a lot of utility out of your Terra. But
Right.
these Terra types are very confusing to me. Electric, that makes sense. Like,
Grass for energy ball makes sense to me.
yeah, I guess I could see that as well. But then flying really does not make any sense to me. Like
Likewise.
you're not weak to ground, so like what like why do you care? You don't get
Right.
any good flying type moves either. I guess maybe a Terra Blast flying could be good into something, but I don't know what that something
Like
is.
what? Like a fighting type?
I mean, I
Because you cover
guess.
grasses. You already cover on grass.
Yeah. You're already covered. Yeah. I don't know. I would just drop a Thunder instead. I would just tear up
Right.
and Thunder instead of going flying. But okay. I think Water or Ice would be better here for the coverage. Um, but I mean, to each their own. And then Toucannon as a Terra captain. Keep in mind, Galvantula is 8 points, Toucannon is 3, so you have 20 points you could allocate. Mimikyu is a 9-pointer. You could also have Terra Mimikyu with these two, but they decided not to do that. Which maybe they'll do it later in the season. Maybe I don't know. Or like Terra Tauros is not bad either, but this Toucannon is strange. Dragon, again, to me, reads as a defensive type, and, like, I mean, look at this. What are you defending against? Plus, you already have a ice weakness, right? So...
Right.
I don't know how much you were going to get out of Dragon. I think if you were going to pick a defensive type, I would have picked Water or Fairy or Steel instead. Ground, I mean, it's coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But you also have Skill Link. I think you probably could have afforded to do Rock and maybe Grass and just get yourself a stab, Skill Link, Bullet Seed, Rock Blast type thing. If you're gonna do Terra Toucannon.
Right, yeah.
So then, this team really needs a thick, fat Pokemon, is what it looks like. The Fire and the Ice is a little bit interesting, although...
But you do have a lot of resist, 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's true. And plus, your Ices are... Like, Venusaur or Toucannon are not going to come to every game. You might not bring both Dragons to every game. I think I like Corviknight a little more than Jirachi for this team, particularly with the top two. I think defensively it handles more that you would want. And, you're not doubling up on the ground weakness. I think Jirachi could go, as much as it pains me to say it as a big Jirachi fan. And then also, like, look, there's all this ghost weakness in the middle here. Like, replacing Jirachi with, like, I don't know, a fairy, like a decent defensive fairy type.
Or what about a physical attacker?
Or a physical attacker that's not weak to ghost. That would be good.
You just need a physical attacker pretty badly.
Yeah, honestly, maybe something like... I was gonna say like a good dark type, but I was running through them in my head, and I think a lot of them have already been drafted. Like, I mean, Tinglu's already drafted.
Right.
I don't think you want King Gambit. That sounds not great.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Jirachi could be something else, and then we could have a little bit more solid of a team. And then some of the lower tier picks are a little interesting. So you have a log jam here at 100.
Right.
Which is not ideal. You would rather spread your speed out.
Right.
Because you don't want one Pokemon who can just be faster and threaten a revenge kill on all of these Pokemon. Because that gives them way too much utility. Granted, you could argue, well, okay, if Tauros was base 95, that doesn't solve the issue, right? But, I think the speed could be a little better.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have anything faster than 110.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll see how this team goes. I think it's got It's got a decent nucleus. I think its electron cloud is a little bit all over the place.
I
If you want
mean,
to do an
it
atom.
it just doesn't have a physical attacker outside
Yeah,
of Tauros.
that's true. I mean, Jirachi,
But
maybe, but not, it's
I mean,
not
it's
great.
base 100, right? Like,
Yeah, plus you're primarily going to be using like Ironhead, which granted, Ironhead Jirachi is good, but it's not like a breaker.
right.
Um, it's really easy to switch into Steel type offensively. So, yeah, I don't know. It, I think a few tweaks to this team could make it better. I think as it stands, it's okay.
Yeah. I think it could use more sauce.
It could definitely use more sauce. Every team could use a little more sauce. Well, not every team. The team with
No.
6 good Pokemon and then the rest could maybe use a little less sauce.
Yeah, you need a little something to put the sauce on, right?
Yeah, exactly. The hazards is not fantastic on this team either.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. It could use it could use a little bit more variety and a little more sauce. All right, next we have Great Tusk falling to the 13th pick. I mean, it's not as egregious as what happened in your guys' division, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, no, Great Tusk is a really high value pick, and getting it 13th, that's great. Like,
Right.
the only problem with Great Tusk in draft is you would love to get it on the wheel, but it's not gonna make it to the wheel. But it made it to,
Right.
pretty much made it to the wheel, so like,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
It means you can get Great Tusk with a good certainty of what you can get next, which Great Tusk can really go with anything, but obviously if you can get your speed control handled early, that's awesome. And like getting Greninja as well, like
Yes.
as an early round 2 pick is very strong, right?
Yes, and then Enamorous to go with them. I think like this is a pretty solid core to build a team around.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean there's a little bit of
I'm a little
overlapping weakness,
surprised that Enamorous made it all the way back on the 3rd round wheel.
I know that is kind of crazy. I think so. Then we get Mew, and I think we spent a lot of time talking about Mew last time, and about how
Yeah.
it has a lot of varied utility, but it does not
Mhm.
have a lot of sauce, you know. And
Right.
we like our sauce here.
But we have sauce. Our first 3 picks are just sauce. So
That's
I think
true.
it makes sense. Like this is where Mew fits, right? Where you don't need it to
exactly.
bring. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Mew, like, it gets spikes, right?
Yes.
Okay. So Mew with Greninja and Orthworm as alternate spikers, I think that's great. Like, if Orthworm's coming to the game, okay, you don't have to be the hazard stacking Mew.
Right.
And if Mew has a really good setup sweep matchup, but Greninja doesn't, okay, well then Greninja can bring the spikes.
Yeah.
And if neither of those things happens, if Greninja is going to be better suited as the offensive guy and Orthworm does not have a good matchup, then Mew's great for getting the hazards up. I think Mew, because it's got access to Thunder Wave and Toxic, I think, and Will-O-Wisp. Yes. That's great support for your top 3 as well. So
Yeah.
and you're not stepping on your base 100 toes. It's the only base 100 here. So I think Mew actually fits really well.
I agree.
There
And
you
you
go.
know that I'm a Mew hater. So to say I think Mew is good here is good.
Yeah. I mean, me, I'm ambivalent on Mew. You are a Mew hater, and we both had good things to say about it this time. So, like,
Yeah.
that's a W.
Yeah.
Arboliva as a Terra captain, I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I like it.
I think the one thing is, so Fairy is not bad on Arboliva. It's got Dazzling Gleam, and it can make use of that. But as a defensive Terra, I think I like Steel or Poison. I think I'm leaning more towards Poison better, because you can take advantage of. Yeah, you can take advantage of Seed Sower to basically eliminate your Earthquake weakness. And like you're also not afraid of poison
You shed your
types.
fighting weakness.
Shed your fighting weakness, exactly. You're not worried about getting toxic, so you can stay in and be an annoying leech seed spammer.
Yep.
Strength sap, like poison is a great type to be when you have like strength sap. This is why I love Vileplume. Don't get me started on Vileplume. But
Okay.
but Arboliva could kind of do the same thing. But I mean, fire I think is a really good coverage option, and fairy I think is good enough, especially on a team where like you don't have another great defensive fairy type. Enamorus is like you're not going to invest in its defenses, so
Right.
Arboliva can help you out. Glass as not a Terra captain is a little bit odd.
Yeah.
I think it benefits a lot from Terra, so that it has like really strong, like it's got good coverage, right, with ground and fighting.
Mhm.
And getting stab boost on those with your base 145 attack, that's actually really good. Like you want Glass to trade.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's forcing in something that's faster than it. Granted, there's a lot, everything's faster than it, but like something that can't afford to set up in its face because it's threatening really strong damage. So you could force a trade and then get KO'd by a revenge killer, and then you can go into either your faster revenge killer like Greninja, or something that's threatening to set up in its mouth like Enamorus or Mew. I think there should be a consideration for Glass as a Terra captain. I know that you don't have, like, it means you can't do Terra Orthworm or Terra Darkspun, and you're gonna have a lot of dead points on your Terra, but like I still think it's worth considering.
Yeah, I mean, Glass is a lot better with Terra. Being able to shed its ice type is obviously great.
Yeah, defensively as well. Rotom Wash is a really nice glue piece. I think this team was needing another water type. Particularly
Yeah, and having something with some good SPDEF as well is nice.
Yeah, so I think this is good, and it's also a good pivot. It's like very close in speed to Great Tusk, so anything that's slower than Great Tusk, you're gonna be probably faster than with your Rotom Wash as well. So that's kind of nice. I think Rotom Wash and Great Tusk work pretty well together as a defensive unit.
Yep.
Orthworm I think is also kind of good. It's a ground immunity, a kind of non-standard one. It's also got really good defense and spikes. I think it's solid.
Yeah,
I don't know
I don't know
about these
about the
Terra types.
yeah.
So you're gonna say?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I think Terra Fighting is good for body press. I understand Electric is for your immunity to ground, but you're already a good type immune to ground.
Right, exactly.
Like, I
Yeah,
don't know what Electric adds for you. Like, you're already like resisting flying, right? Like,
yeah. Like
I
defensively
don't.
speaking, I don't see why you would switch to Electric. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I would rather pick either an offensive type, and maybe Electric is intended to be offensive, although I don't know. Like, what are you hitting that you can't hit already with body
Right.
press plus steel coverage? Maybe like a water type? I don't know. Um, I think I'd rather see something like fighting, for example, or water, maybe?
Yeah. I don't know. I
Ghost,
don't think
maybe?
Orthworm needs to be a Terra captain.
I kind of agree with that, which is why I think there should be more consideration for Glass. And then Typhlosion and Darkspun to round it out. I did not realize that they had the same speed stat. That's really
That's funny.
weird. But I think Typhlosion is kind of interesting. It can be like Scarf Eruption, or I mean even Specs Eruption if the matchup is right for it. That's kind of
Mhm.
cool. And I think Ghost coverage with your fire is also kind of nice. Um, it's okay. Frisk could be interesting to give you
Right.
some information. And then Darkspun, I mean, it's a good Chi-Yu answer against the Chi-Yu Rain team. Um, but uh, it's also got Wish. I don't know what else it's really gonna do though. Like it has decent defensive stats except for HP.
Mhm.
And as a Wish passer with this low HP, that's a little bit of a red flag.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then its Terra types. I mean, Steel with your Fairy, I think is pretty good, right?
Especially
Because
as Webbait's body.
yeah, oh yeah, exactly. And then Ground, I mean, Ground maybe is to hit something. I don't know, like Keytran,
Yeah.
but I mean, you're probably I don't know. Your Water would be a little bit too much. Like getting lost in the defensive sauce.
Right.
So I don't mind an offensive pick, but also like keeping in mind that we're only base 80 attack. It's not like we've got great, and we don't have great coverage moves to boost
Mhm.
hit or stab with Darkspun. So I don't know. But overall, I think this is actually pretty decent,
Yeah.
especially this top 4 or 5 mons. I think that's
Mhm.
really nice. So there's a lot of like there's some pockets of weakness here. All bug, fighting, fire, grass, ice, poison. I mean, you can read the screen.
Hmm.
3 or more weaknesses. Sometimes we seem like we're handling it pretty well, like grass. A lot of good resistances here. Particularly, I think that Orthworm and Arboliva handle grass really well. Especially for budget Pokemon.
Right.
Um, Fighting. I mean, you're probably not bringing Arboliva and Glass to the same match unless like they don't have good fighting types.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't think fighting is as bad as it looks. 5 ice resists is really really interesting. Not a lot of teams have that. Although,
Yeah. I mean, you have what water, grass, or you have a water. You have two water types. You got a ice type. You got a fire type. You have a steel type. Right.
yeah,
Like.
it it's interesting. I mean, I think
Mhm.
I think it's more of your consequential Pokemon are weak to ice, and more your incidental Pokemon are like the resists. But I think you have
Right.
enough incidental Pokemon that are good enough to bring to games that I wouldn't worry about it too much. Um, Rock is always a little bit of a problem, but
Mhm.
I mean, I don't see Typhlosion and Glass both coming to the same game very often.
Right.
So I don't like that's also not so bad. So yes, there's some concentrated pockets of weakness, but I think you actually handle them pretty well. 3 ground immunities is also really nice.
Yeah.
So let's see. I think these speed tiers are also pretty good. Faster than 110, faster than 100. A 100 to speed tie the 100s. I mean, I'm not complaining about this.
No, good speed tiers for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, so overall, I think it's a pretty good team.
Yeah.
Like there's some there's some like little bits of like little pockets of criticism maybe, but like overall, I think the core idea of it is solid.
Right.
YouTube, did you pause on me again? I hate you.
Hmm.
I hate you so much. This is why I should use Spotify instead. All right, lastly we have the wheel Bond, And what a wheel pick this is. Look at
I
that.
love this team so much. This team is so good.
Well, I mean, I see this and
Woo,
like,
baby.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
okay.
Garchomp Golden Go is really good
Yes, no,
as the first two.
that's a great wheel. And this is what everybody's looking for when they're the 14th pick on the wheel, you know?
Right.
Like
You're looking for your like Rillaboom Unburdened Pokemon, or you're looking for your Goldengo Hazard Stack Pokemon, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, and the thing is like are Garchomp or Goldengo great first round picks? I mean, I think there's better.
Garchomp is
Garchomp is a
absolutely
pretty good first round pick.
yeah.
It's a lot better in meta games where it's allowed to Terra, but I mean, it handles a lot of issues for you.
Are there any meta games where Garchomp's allowed to Terra?
Is it not allowed to Terra?
I'm pretty sure it's definitely banned in SPL.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, but I mean, it's also better in meta games where you have less Pokemon to pick because it does a lot of good role consolidation for you.
Mhm.
It's a potential setup sweeper. It's a spike stealth rock hazard stacker. It's also possible as like a defensive Pokemon with rough skin and rocky helmet and rest. You can get a lot of chip on physical attackers.
Yeah.
You don't even necessarily need rest either, but like that's the standard tank chomps that runs rest. Goldengo with Spike Stacker as good as Garchomp. Like, I mean, there's like maybe two other Pokemon you would argue are like as good or better Spike Stackers than Garchomp.
Yeah,
Maybe
like
three.
Tinglu.
Tinglu, H-Rot, and Glomora.
Right.
Maybe. I mean,
It's a good thing you have another one right there.
Yeah, that's true. Although I will make a comment about this when we get down to it. Serena as the third pick. I don't think Serena is a super high value pick. I don't hate it. I mean, I think it's got good utility as a U-turn knockoff Rapid Spin type of Pokemon. Not very many Pokemon get that. It's Grass Tusk.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we shipping that? I mean,
We
look
can
at the
ship
stats.
Grass Tusk.
It's actually compare that to Great Tusk. That's actually pretty close. Well, maybe not so much on the HP and defense, but you know what I mean. Queenly Majesty is a cool ability.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if I would pick it third, but I don't think you got punished at all because look at these next two.
Yeah.
Sinistcha is arguably the best Terra Captain on the board.
Right. Like I could see Sinistcha falling to 4, but I can't see Darkrai going to 5. That's insane.
I know. Darkrai to 5 on the wheel. Like,
yeah.
That's 5 at the end of the 5th round.
Right.
That's crazy. I mean, there's always going to be like 1 or 2 high tier Pokemon that don't get drafted because nobody wants to build a team around them, and the people who should build a team around them are not serious. But getting Darkrai this late when you already have like this is already pretty solid. I mean, yeah. So and like this is Darkrai's handling a lot for you. It's a potential wall breaker, a potential setup sweeper. It's got a great speed tier. And you were kind of in desperate need of a really fast Pokemon because like Garchomp being the fastest, that's not gonna cut it.
But, no, absolutely
but with
not.
Darkrai looking much better. Next we have Lycanroc Dusk. I'm not a big fan of Lycanroc Dusk. I think it has its place as like the Accelerock spam. It can handle some key rock weak Pokemon like Volcarona and Kyurem, for example. But I guess when you look at some of these teams and how rock weak they are, maybe this makes more sense, you know?
Right.
So you know what? I guess I don't hate it as much as I'm not a believer in Lycanroc Dusk. I think that in this particular draft it makes sense.
Yeah, I think also like it does the like lead hazard thing on weeks where you want to bring different Garchomps, right?
Yeah,
like
that's true.
You can just be like that focus sash Endeavor, Accelerock, Stealth Rock set or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And just like get your rocks off, kill yourself, and then let the rest of the team do its thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So like you have room for Garchomp to be great at setting hazards, but you also have room for Garchomp to be great at like breaking or setting up, which is good.
Right. Or just being like, if you want to run tank chomp with coverage instead of hazards, like that,
Yeah,
like you're afforded that. And we could argue the same thing about H-Rot, but I think I'm not as big a fan of H-Rot for this team because you already have a dark type with Darkrai and you already have a good hazard stacker with Garchomp. There's nothing wrong with getting two good hazard stackers, but both Garchomp and Samurott are pretty expensive. I think Garchomp does more roles than H-Rot. I know H-Rot doesn't have to be Ceaseless Edge Suicide Lead every game, but I think that's the role that it kind of is best suited for. I think maybe we could have gotten a cheaper hazard stacker.
maybe, but again, I think like yes, Garchomp is a really good hazard stack Pokemon, but it doesn't want to do that all the time. Like this, it's as good because it can do a ton of things, and I think like having Samurott like be the spiker is great. Like it's the probably the best offensive spiker that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And like even if you still want Garchomp to be rocks, like you can just never have to worry about spikes because you have H-Rot.
Right. Well, sort of what I'm
And you've
saying
got
is,
Goldango. Like I think diversifying your hazard options so your really good mon doesn't have to bring it is great. I think I had a H-Rot Garchomp Goldango team, and I had some other really good Pokemon,
yeah,
but
you did
like
get. I mean, you talk about somebody getting fed in the Rocks League. You want to talk about
yeah,
that Iron Valiant team, literally using
yeah.
one of the players who should have been kicked out of the league as the bank, brother. Anyway, and I'm not bitter about it.
It sounds like you're really bitter about it, and all I would have to say is skill issue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my bad that my team didn't perfectly counter Garchomp, Goldango, Iron Valiant,
Masquerada.
Meowscarada. Like, come on, brother.
No,
Anyway,
it's an illegal team.
yeah. I mean, yes, I do get what you're saying with H-Rot. This is why I'm saying maybe it could have been a good idea to go a little bit cheaper to get a hazard mon, like a spike stacker, and then like get another good offensive piece with the extra points. Um, but like I guess I see what you're saying is like, H-Rot enables Garchomp to not have to be the spike stacker as much, whereas a cheaper one, maybe if a matchup's not good for that cheap Pokemon, then Garchomp is kind of forced into the spike stacking role.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm of two minds about it.
I think
Uh,
it's really good, and I think like you're talking about going cheaper, but I don't know what's the Pokemon that you look at and say, yeah, like I wish we had more points, and that this is just gonna have to do because we didn't have more points for it.
yeah, I can see that argument. I mean, there's Volbeat at the bottom, which I know is not useless, but like I think there are definitely more useful Pokemon. Um,
Yeah,
you
but
could
if you're going from
also,
like a pointer to like a 5 pointer, are you really doing anything?
well, I'm saying like H-Rot instead of a 17 pointer spiker, you could have had like maybe like a 10 point spiker, and then that's 7 whole points. You could get another.
Mm-hmm.
You could maybe get a better Terra Captain than Serena. Not that Serena's a bad Terra Captain, um, but uh, it's not going to abuse Terra near the same extent as Sinistcha. Granted,
Right.
nothing is, but you could
Yeah.
also get something that complements Sinistcha as a Terra Captain. Like maybe like a good physical attacking Pokemon that's got a little bit more speed than Serena. But I kind of digress. We're kind of I'm kind of nitpicking over what's a pretty damn solid team.
Yeah.
Yeah, Moltres I think is a really good defensive pivot Pokemon. It kind of likes to be a Terra Pokemon, but for an 11 pointer, it can get away with not more so
Hmm.
than other 11 pointers. And if you're gonna have Sinistcha, yeah, I mean, you don't need to Terra the Moltres.
Right.
Muck and Volbeat to round it out. Muck being the grounded poison type, I no complaints about that. Volbeat, Prankster with some decent disruption moves like Thunder Wave and Encore. I think that's pretty solid.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't do a lot other than that. Like you have U-turn, but like I mean Thunder Waving something and then U-turning out on it like for 2 points. Like, are you really gonna complain about that?
Right.
Um, let's look at some of the weaknesses. So I noticed some things like fire and flying, but like and rock. I mean, not to nearly the same extent, but I know that that's Volbeat, and who cares what Volbeat is weak to?
Right.
So get rid of that. You don't have to consider that. Fairy, I mean, some pretty key Pokemon. Like probably your three best Pokemon on your team, other than Goldengo, but still probably arguably your three best, are all weak to Fairy. Um,
Hmm.
Moltres and Goldengo are plenty good enough at switching into Fairy moves. Both of them have recovery to help themselves.
Right.
Muck is also there. You have worse defensive switch-ins than Muck, that's for sure.
Hmm.
Um, I think you're okay against that. Fighting, I mean, you have a lot of resistances and immunities to fighting.
Right.
Um, so and so, like Lycanroc is not coming to a game where there's like a lot of great fighting types. Like it can't get it can't do its job necessarily. I mean, yeah, Psychic Fangs maybe, but like you know,
Hmm.
you don't want
I
to
mean,
be.
like the Endeavor lead set really doesn't care, right? Because
Yeah,
anything's gonna kill it. It
that
doesn't super matter what it is.
that's kind of true as well. So I mean, although the fighting types that have Mach Punch are a little bit like
Right.
be a little bit wary of that, but two psychic immunities because you have two dark types. That's kind of cool, but I would maybe have looked to take advantage of that a little more. Like if there were other good psychic weak Pokemon, but like not every team needs a fighting type or a like high value poison type either. So it's kind of whatever. Um, ground, it's not that bad. A weakness. You could always run a balloon on Goldengo and not bring Lycanroc or Muck, and then you really don't even have a ground weakness at all. So
Right.
um, ice is something maybe to consider. I think Sinistcha is probably going to Terra out of its ice weakness. Do you have Steel on this? No. Interesting. I would have probably picked Water instead of Fairy for the ice type matchups,
Hmm.
but uh, overall, I just think this is solid. The speed tiers are really good. Like this is like, I mean, this is like the example of what you want your speed tiers to look like, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah. So this is really solid. I mean, maybe a few nitpicks here and there, like I said, but I think this is one of the better teams we've looked at.
Agree.
Um, so yeah, I can't remember all these teams quite as well as the Rocks division. I think one thing I've noticed between as a difference is the Rocks division. A lot more of the teams had a lot stronger identities.
Hmm.
Some of these teams and Spikes have kind of had like loose identities, which is not always a bad thing. Um, teams that have more defined identities are a little bit more predictable, but like I'd rather be predictable and good than unpredictable and inconsistent, you know?
Hmm.
Um, But if I had to think about some teams that I thought were really good, I think Bond's team, like we just said, is pretty good. I think
I think Bond and Anzo are the best two teams in this
I th- I think
division.
yeah, I think I'd agree with that as well. I think there are a lot of other teams that are like one or two steps away from being like really good. Alice's
Mhm.
team, this Lando team,
Yes,
uh,
Alice's team,
Jet's
Ukakalaka's
team,
team.
Jet's team is interesting. I think it could either be really, really good or just like flawed in its concept. We'll just have to see.
Right. The Sun team's
Kakalaka,
really good.
yeah. Wait, which one? There's a
Sapphic
ninth.
Disaster.
Yes, that's right.
The one that's an actual Sun team.
The Gouging Fire Walking Wake Torkoal. Yeah, that one's really nice too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's hard to pick. Like, I sort of agree with you that Bon and sorry, I cannot remember. And Anzo were probably the two strongest teams, but I think Sapphic Disaster is like in that conversation as well.
Yep.
I think.
I mean, I agree. I think it's like Anzo and Bond, and then right below it is Sapphic Disaster, only because it's Sun, and Sun is like you can build around Sun. If you don't like prepare for Sun at all, then that team is number one by a large margin. It's going to blow everyone away in like 4 turns. So
yeah, I mean, oh yeah, you could win a game like with Torkoal and getting to Gouging Fire, and if you don't have a Gouging Fire switch into the game's over. Like just
yeah,
base that fast. I think the other, I forget who had the 13th pick. Chuver. Chuver's got a solid team.
Yep, I agree.
I think there's an argument that could also be like one of these like top 3, top 4 type teams.
I think the other teams are like I think it's like a move or two away.
I think
but it's definitely really good.
This is probably the best balanced team. I mean, I guess there's it depends on how much we think this classifies as a balanced team. I would say it's a little bit more offensive.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the top half of this division is a lot closer together. At least in terms of the team's strength. I think that some of these teams that I wouldn't consider to be extremely strong, like maybe say like Bumper Eddie's team, I think has a few too many problems for me to sign off and say that's like a really good team. But like it's still workable. You have good mons. You can play a good game with this.
Yeah.
I think you could play a good game with Ukakalaka's team. I think you could play a good game with this.
Was Ukakalaka the team that's missing hazard control?
Okay, ignore that aspect of it.
Put hazard control on the team, and then we're talking. We're cooking. Yeah,
exactly. And then this Meowscarada Volcarona team, I forget who. I think that's Blobfishy. I think that's a good team as well.
Yeah.
The only problem is this Cresselia team with no sauce. Like, that's to me is clearly the weakest team. I also don't know if you can fix it. Like this is a problem with like at least with the way that our draft format is set up and how we do trades. Like it's really hard to fix a team that has a bunch of mid on it because you have to spend a lot of free agency tokens to get there, you know?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, plus
and I don't know how much sauce is left on the board.
Right, you're gonna have to
like who's leaving sauce on the table. Yeah. I guess there's Iron Bundle.
Yeah,
Latios.
Iron Bundle, I mean that's a Pokemon that can be built around. So
yeah,
and it would help with your speed a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that's a consideration. I know it's not extremely easy to like to fix a team like this, so that you can have like a really strong identity around some like good Pokemon, but I don't know. Yeah, like I mean, a bundle could work wonders. Like you have a much better special attacker than like Enamorus, Hydreigon, Meloetta, who are all a little too slow to really be that threatening.
Mm-hmm.
At least as the primary special attacker. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I'll do a tier list exactly for this one because I think like there's basically 3 tiers. Like the top like 4 or 5 teams I think are all really good. Then like the vast majority of the rest of the teams are all like 1 or 2 steps away from being good, and then there's that last team that we just looked at, which is it's got some problems, but no, I think this is going to be an exciting league.
Mm-hmm.
More exciting than Rocks. I said it. There you go.
Whoa.
You have any thoughts?
I mean, kill leader.
Kill leader. Well, Palafin's not on our rain team this time, but I still think Palafin maybe. But no, probably Iron Valiant. Like this is a
Iron
team.
Valiant.
I think this is a team that's really well built for Iron Valiant to come in and like do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Darkrai definitely has a chance. Darkrai with Hazard support, like that's scary. Yeah. I think
Gouging Fire
on a Sun team, like yeah, exactly. I mean, the only pause I have with Gouging Fire is you also have Walking Wake.
Yeah, so, it's gonna have to share with Walking Wake.
Yeah, but if I had to put money on one Pokemon, I think I'd put it on Iron Valiant. My next pick would be Darkrai.
Yeah.
But Lando could do something too. I don't know. There's a lot of good teams, I think, and a lot of good Pokemon here. So I know you were talking mess on Sawsbuck, but wasn't Sawsbuck one of the only Pokemon that was drafted on both boards? Like for a low tier Pokemon?
Was Sawsbuck drafted in Rocks? I forgot. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so quit hating.
I'm super hating on Sawsbuck. If either player can do something with it, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, well, granted, this is maybe a little spoilers, but that's what you said about Chimecho, and
what do you mean by that?
We'll see what happens.
No, man. No.
In any case, I think this is done it for
Chimecho. Me. Oh.
You did not have to say it like that, brother. Anyway, that does it for me. I think that does it for Ephemeral. He's all Chimecho'd out now. So
someone taunted me, and now I can't do anything.
All right, we will. You know what? Chimecho might be the best lake spirit.
Don't you ever say that again?